Right, this is going to be episode 34 of OverSight, and it's going to be one of our mega episodes where we preview, in this particular case, the playoffs of Season 1, obviously, because we finished the 4 stages. Now we're ready for the big playoffs. It's all been leading up to this, and we're going to have tons of different guests on. We're going to cycle them in and out. We're going to do the usual thing. I mean, just again, I like to be very transparent when I do this show. So I'm going to let people into the behind the scenes, which is I already have a totally flawed concept in how I structure these shows, which I actually would like to give credit to the old school esports organizers who I learned this method from, which is you schedule things in a way that logistically is impossible. Because you know what they used to do in tournaments, Monty? Spoiler, they still do, is they will schedule a match like this, Monty. Are you ready? Match 1 goes live at 9 a.m. and ends at 10 a.m. What time do you think they've scheduled match 2 to go live at?
10 a.m.
10 a.m., yeah. Now, in no universe could the team who's playing teleport off stage, a new team teleport on stage, the casters get everything ready, and then start again. So what that means is, if the schedule's super long, you are just strap in, you're fucked if you do one of those events. So you know it's going forever. Now, the sad thing is, I've been doing the same thing, because not only do I give people a block when they're going to come on the show, but then, first of all, we even have the audacity to run over some segments. So they're just sat there, their PC, like, please OP respond, please respond, like, and no one's messaging them or calling them. And then also, I don't leave any time for the turnaround. So if they take more than 1 minute, then the next person after them suffers even more.
But fortunately, everyone who works in esports is already conditioned to just sit there and wait patiently. Yes. So we don't have to worry about it. It's not even rude anymore.
Yes,
LiNkzr knows. He used to play on online cups.
Yeah. I remember the times when you wake up like 11 a.m. and you play till like 5 a.m. because the tournament is just badly done.
Right, here's the thing, okay, Monty. As we start the show, now obviously some of the guests we're going to have on are from some of the teams that didn't make the playoffs, because some of the playoff teams obviously are too busy, and some of them might not want to mess with their mentality and talk about things beforehand because, well, this generation was raised with hugs and fucking Power Rangers or something. I don't know what it is, Monty. They weren't like Spartans. They weren't sent out into the fucking wilderness and made to learn to be men and, you know, overcome all the problems in life. They weren't like that. So I wanted to start at the beginning of the show, though, before we get into it. Since this whole show is going to be about the playoffs, it's about the six teams that have a chance to win the Overwatch League. They overall performed the best aggregate over the 4 stages, and now they're going for it all. But let's take a moment to acknowledge the teams that didn't make it. Now, look, LiNkzr, this is a bit awkward that you're actually here. I should have actually scheduled it better and had one of the playoff teams. So just hang with me for this one, because I just want to say at the beginning of the show to the teams that didn't make it. We live again in an era where you're used to being coddled, you're being praised, told, oh, you're in the top 1% of players. I just want to make this clear. You are all losers. You have failed on every level that's meaningful. Some of you are terrible. Like, don't worry, I'm not going to make any false equivalency. Like, listen, Florida Mayhem, Shanghai, get the fuck out of here. Now, yes, okay, Houston Outlaws, yes, teams like that, you were in the running, okay, you almost made it, okay, close but no cigar, though. Like, you still don't get anything for that. You know, there's no participation award. There's no, you don't get a hug. You don't get a hug or a Power Ranger for this placing. Unless you're in the playoffs, you are relevant, except if you're a guest on this show, in which case we love and appreciate you for your role as a guest on the show. So yeah, don't worry about it. So if anything, LiNkzr, I'm actually glad you didn't make the playoffs, because I don't know if you'd have been able to come on the show today. So I'm just glad that we could have you here. We could finally get to learn why your team just wakes up sort of bipolar one day, like, oh, you're a Widowmain player permanently now, and then the next day they're like, oh, you're not anymore, you don't do that anymore, someone else on the team does that, and then just Outlaws.
Congratulations, you're a tracer.
Exactly, yeah. And you go, well, that's weird, because, you know, sometimes those are different roles, and they go, what are you talking about? No, it's like 1984. They go, no, you were always a tracer player at LiNkzr. Like, oh, okay, cool. Or at least after everyone did the mind wipe of Jake's tracer anyway. So yeah, you were always the tracer. You were LiNkzr. You were always the tracer, mate. Right, let's get it started then. So here's the first question, LiNkzr. We'll address it a little bit. How do you think of the Outlaws season overall? I mean, there was times, obviously, early on, you were one of the first non-Korean teams to make the playoffs of a stage. There was certainly times where you were in contention to make playoffs and your team was looking like one of the better teams. In the end, didn't make it, but not by a massive margin. How do you weigh up the whole season for yourself?
I think for Houston, I think yes, we didn't make up and we didn't get like any hugs or anything, but we are kind of happy, you know, how far we got. like nonetheless in the whole Overwatch League. I think like when we went to stage 1 and we talked about like overall how many games we had to win, and it was like 24 wins and 16 losses, which was right at the cutoff. And there was definitely like more than 2 games where we obviously underperformed. And I think even there were games like where it didn't matter who was on Tracer and what we did. It was just like the games were lost out of game, if that makes sense. Is like actually playing like the bipolar is kind of good way to describe our team sometimes. When it came to like mentality at the like stage 2 and stage 3, it was really rough time. But then like stage 4 was a better stage, but it was like already too late.
Well, I think what shows how close it was is that your team actually won 1 map more than the Philadelphia Fusion, but obviously it goes by games won, it's purely by maps. So it shows how close it was. I mean, that means basically it's got to be 1-3-2 in there that if it goes your way, you'd be in the playoffs.
Well, they were 7 too, and that's the thing is that they were 1 slot away from making the playoffs. And also, if we look at them too, they were in the Atlantic Division, which ended up being a significantly harder division this season than the Pacific, which meant that they were skipping matches. They didn't play. They played everybody in the Pacific Division every stage, but then they were skipping Atlantic Division opponents, which were probably easier, right? Because if you're talking about later in the season Seoul, earlier in the season San Francisco, earlier in the season Dallas or Shanghai at any point in the season, those are going to be much easier wins. So if they
most of the teams that didn't make the playoffs,
basically like.
It's like like the one thing we obviously talked about, but then like it could have mattered, right? It was like up to us to win the harder games that we had, but we skipped a lot of like easy opponents, I guess, and that could have been like a huge difference already.
Okay, so we jokingly alluded earlier to some of the issues that the team did have, though. So even though your team was one of the better teams at certain times in the league, was it an issue to not have a really good dedicated Tracer player from the beginning of Overwatch League? I mean, no one could have known what the meta was going to be like for so long, but do you think it ended up being an issue?
I mean, obviously it was an issue. Like, I would say it was like 20% of our problems, when it came to a match that we lost, It wasn't like end of the world, but it obviously had an effect to our mentality and like how we practiced and like how much resource we put into the like having a Tracer player and like practicing like me on Tracer, Jake on Tracer, Clockwork on Tracer, and like trying out which worked best. It took a lot of time, and that time could have been allocated to like practicing as a team, practicing strategies, like like more important stuff, I guess. So it definitely took away from the practice time.
Right, as we start to talk about the playoffs now, I just want to get where your head's at the beginning. So for most of the Overwatch League, the overwhelming favourite has been the New York Excelsior, and most people probably in their minds thought like they're either going to win or be in the final. But as we come into the playoffs, let me ask you this question. Do you think that in Stage 4, NYXL was either hiding something, hiding strategies, or purposely playing an older style, or not showing everything, knowing that they were already in the playoffs? Do you actually think that? I mean, you obviously had a very close game against them at the end of the season.
No, the way it felt like to me, it was that the players definitely felt more sloppy in the match we played. Like, it's easy for me to tell when I'm playing the Widowmaker against a team that usually is very coordinated and has like a very set styles for how they like deny you. Like it felt like it was much easier for me to on a couple of maps to take like good shots at them. So I felt like they reduced the amount of like effort they put into on some maps. I felt like some maps they were like really strong on, and they like really practiced those maps, and but on some maps it felt like they were like slacking.
Right, Monty, now that we're ready for the playoffs, we've done the whole Stage 4, we've done the playoffs of Stage 4. what's your final take on the whole sandbagging issue? Because here's the thing. I know people got very upset with this, right? And this being a theme, Monty, that you brought up the sandbagging, etc. Now, I'm not sure why they're upset, because first of all, as we've alluded to, people for literally half a decade have been calling you a Korean dick sucker. But you've even owned it. You've even said, yes, I'm a Korean fellatio enthusiast. So you've owned it. And yet at the end, they still go, yeah, but you're bloody biased in favor of Koreans. Yes, I'm saying that. Yes, that is absolutely the case. I love the best Korean teams. And they're like, no, but the thing is, why are you always talking them? It's like, no, yes, I do that. So, okay, there's still a disconnect, Monty. They still don't think that it's gotten through to you. So I'm aware of this. But so where did he come down at the end on it? Like, was there a degree to which, for example, fucking around like that actually might have made it harder when they got to the playoffs of the stage?
Well, of course. But here's the thing: is that I predicted on Watchpoint when we were looking at everything for the stage playoffs. I predicted Valiant to win. I thought that they were going to win the stage playoffs because I didn't think New York could instantly get back into shape. And I think people really misinterpret what sandbagging means because they seem to struggle with the concept that sandbagging is not throwing. Like, these are two different things. I think what New York was doing was not practicing as much and therefore just running default strategies, and that was it. I think they just weren't planning or preparing very heavily for these matches. That's what I think was going on. So overall,
you could compare it to, for example, like in the NBA, it became a trend with the most famous team was the San Antonio Spurs. When some of their old players were like really at the end of their career, if they'd already locked up like a top seed for the playoffs, they would just rest them for a couple of games. And like, you know, if you come into the playoffs, then yeah, you're not going to be in like the perfect shape, but it was worth it to get some of those people like a rest and reset, etc.
Yeah, and people are saying, like, LOL, why would they sandbag when 100K was on the line? And of course the answer is because there's going to be $1 million on the line in a few weeks. So, you know, you're already going to win some amount of money for even getting into the finals like they did against the Valiant. And then after that, you just, you know, you chill out. You don't really prepare. But, you know, even in stage 3 playoffs, when they started to ramp up again, we at least saw them when they played the Valiant and they beat them 3-0 in the stage 3 playoffs. We saw custom strategies that they were preparing. They were running Far without a Mercy to chase out the Far Mercy combo on the side of the Valiant because they realized they could zone them out in a 1v2 and then win the ground battle. So there was stuff that New York was doing that was unique and it was catered towards the Valiant. We really didn't see that this time around. And of course, you could make an argument that maybe they're uncomfortable with the meta. Possibly, and the Valiant's better at this meta because we don't really know how good New York can be at this meta because we just didn't see it really in stage 4 because they locked up the #1 seed so early. But sure. I think that in the moment, did they want to beat Valiant? Sure they did. But were they really training very hard? Were they in shape? Did they have their coaches preparing these custom strategies? No, they didn't. So I wouldn't really, like, if you're the New York Excelsior, if I was coaching this team, what I would be saying is, now, the Valiant are probably the most likely team we're going to face in the Overwatch League season finals, unless London gets hot again. So if that's the case, why would we show what we know about Valiant right now? Because you're only going to teach them how to avoid your strategies later on, right? So there's no reason for them to even try to prepare, I think, heavily for the stage 4 playoffs when you have that in the back of your mind that you might be facing them in New York for the season playoffs. So I don't know. I think that obviously time will tell. We'll see in the semifinals if this theory is correct or not. But there's nothing to suggest that it isn't because they just haven't been behaving like we've seen them previously, especially from a preparation end. Okay. So, I mean, did you feel that way, LiNkzr, when you were playing against them? Did it seem like they were just going through the motions? They weren't actually like. Did it seem like they had prepared for you, the Houston Outlaws?
No, I don't think they prepared for us at all. I think they were just like relying on their past experiences to beat us. Like you said, like if I was New York Excelsior and after I look on that like first place seed, I wouldn't like focus that much, you know. Like I would take it easy. The whole season was so stressful for the players.
Yes.
And
let's get into that. Let's get into that. So
okay.
A lot of players, you tell us. So why, and people don't understand this either. They're like, well, why wouldn't they just keep trying? Literally all the teams and all the players I've talked to have been really burnt out. And so if you have the chance...
Especially since Excelsior, think about it, had to play every stage playoff as well.
Yep, exactly. And you, why don't you tell everybody, LiNkzr, how it feels to be a player in this league? Because it's very difficult to stay focused for that long.
Like I think it isn't like I'm complaining, right? Because it's my job and I love doing it. But there's like you put the immense amount of like effort into like each stage, and because the matches are so like they're like 2 matches per week, right? So your preparation times is like fluctuating. Sometimes you have a day, sometimes you have a 2. So you're like always in your mind, you're constantly thinking like, okay, like this went wrong like last game, and we have like 2 days to fix it. Like what can we do? So there's like huge time pressure on you all the time. And like the one thing that like we obviously talked about already is like the breaks between stages. A lot of the time there's like other responsibilities for the players to do, like media photo shoots, like sponsorship like shoots, like stuff like that. So there's very little time for you to like disconnect from the job and focus on something else and come back with a fresh mind. So, like there's always something like on the back of your mind, like, okay, I have to do this, I have to do that. And it's very hard to relax here.
Yeah. And you're also, when you take into account scrims and VOD review and coaching sessions and your solo queue time, you're talking about 80+ hour weeks, realistically, of working. So if not more. And that sounds insane, and it is. Now, fortunately, there is an off season. And fortunately, I know that right now, all the teams and the league itself has expressed an interest in increasing breaks next season, which has been pretty common. Like I think everybody realizes it was a little intense. I mean, it's been intense for everybody. You guys, us as casters, in terms of our preparation. It's been pretty crazy. And like you're saying, you had to go to Houston for these activations, so a break really isn't a break. And especially when you have a week off and the patch changes, and then you're like, oh shit, we have to practice for this new patch right now. Nobody knows how the game works. We have to figure this out, which obviously at the start of stage 4 looked like it had favored you. I think you guys overemphasized Hanzo and you didn't play Junkrat enough. Like I think you guys got in your own heads and were like all about the double sniper. And like, I was like, because I remember asking you guys, it's fun that I can tell these stories now because, everything's over. But I remember talking to you guys being like, why are you using Hanzo in the Junkrat positionally on King's Road defensive A? And you're like, oh, well, we think it can do everything, that the Junkrat can. And unfortunately, I can't really say things back to you because I can't like affect your strategy. But I was sitting there, I'm like, it really doesn't do that. And I think you guys would be better off running Junkrat. But
yeah, I mean, those are like weird things that happen kind of like in the heat of the moment, right?
Oh, of course,
yeah. You get like tunnel vision into like a strategy, even if it is like optimal. It does happen since like the dawn of time in Overwatch.
Oh yeah, I mean it happens at every esport, right? It's teams are, especially with a new patch, teams are convinced of something that's the best, and it takes time for everybody to figure out together and iterate to figure out what the best strategy actually is. But I do think, like going back to New York, I do think that knowing how stressed out all the players and coaches and everyone was at the end of stage 4, because obviously everybody's racing for the playoffs, to have the luxury that New York has to rest their players and to dial back their practice schedule and then ramp it right back up in these couple weeks, I think, before the playoffs is something that they earned for being excellent throughout the season and something that they deserve. But that's why I find it funny that people are like, why would they leave $100,000 on the table? Well, frankly, to each player, it's not that much money because the org can take a cut of that money. And then you're talking about spreading it between like 8 New York players and the coaching staff. So, the difference is of $100,000, maybe like $6,000 a person. It's not that much compared to the $1 million they could get.
Yeah, like I think how I would feel about it, like no amount of money, like at the end of like when it doesn't really matter for playoffs, will like be like, okay, like I want to burn myself out more, like that's like I wouldn't take like extra money to make myself feel more like worse about what I do. It's just like,
yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. After 6 months of this, it's hard to convince people to take a few thousand extra dollars to burn themselves out. So on the subject of player burnout, what would you change about Houston Outlaws? Because for basically everybody who wasn't like Gamsu or some other players who have been involved in professional, like Bishu, who's been involved in professional esports seasons before that are very rigorous. I think part of the problem is that you guys weren't used to it. So you didn't really know, and maybe you put too much emphasis or took too much of an emotional hit off of losing certain games without realizing that there's so many games in the season to make it back up. But what do you think would be helpful from an infrastructural standpoint for you guys not to burn out as hard next season? Like, what have you learned? What have the Houston Outlaws learned about how to stay fresh and how not to get so fatigued?
I feel like a lot of the stuff will sound like very basic, like proper scheduling, making sure that we allocate like the media responsibilities better. Like I think that was a big thing for like some of the players when they came in. Is that like on top of playing, you have these other responsibilities that you never really thought first when you played from home, in like tournaments once a month, right? And I think it's like finding a balance of like how we like schedule our lives, around the Overwatch League while we are scrimming. I think overall, like we learned a lot from like stage 1 to stage 4. Like the stage 4 was a really good stage for us because I felt like I wasn't doing like too much. Like there was like immense amount of pressure on the players to like perform and get like the necessary wins, but it still didn't feel like I was like overworking myself to try to get these wins. I feel like there's like these slow adjustments and like this. We always have like talks of like how we want to improve things, and like some things are like very minuscule, and like so it's like fine-tuned adjusting like how the team works and how the team feels being around each other, kind of.
Right, we're going to talk about some of the actual matchups in the playoffs now. So first question is, who actually do you think is the best team in the playoffs?
Right now, Valiant. I think their progress was like immense in stage 4. Like they improved so much, and I'm not even sure why.
Okay. Right, in the first matchup, well, I don't know which one technically is going to be first, but in the first round, so we have Boston and Philadelphia. And obviously, the Boston team, actually, in terms of the overall rankings, came in third, but had like kind of a slide at the end. They were having a difficult time. Meanwhile, Fusion, they sort of peaked in the middle of the Overwatch League, and then they kind of had to creep into the playoffs. Who actually do you think is favored in this matchup, LiNkzr?
I think Fusion.
For what reason?
I think like Fusion, like I feel like Fusion has more potential of improving on the break. It might sound weird, but like I feel like Boston already, like the peak they had was a very, very specific kind of peak in my opinion. Like Striker was playing a really good Tracer. Like Gamsus dives were unpredictable and like very hard to like play against. But like right now, both of those things are more figured out, and Tracer isn't as prevalent. And I feel like Fusion has like more punch in the team. Like I think their DPS players in Fusion are slightly better, and I feel like if they can figure out how they execute their dives again, or how the tank line plays together, I feel like they will be like much stronger in the matchup.
Okay, what do you think, Monty?
I also think Fusion's going to win. I also think this is a super good meta for them because with the Hanzo coming in, Carpe is an extraordinary Hanzo player, and not only that, but they can also switch back and forth, I'm sure, between Carpe and Widow, Carpe and Hanzo, EQ on Widow, EQ on Hanzo. So their double sniper is going to be super strong. So I think this is going to be a good meta for Philadelphia overall, and I have a lot less faith in Boston being able to run double sniper. Because they started out after Dreamcasper was kicked from the team. They started out by putting mistakes on the Widow, and then Striker this stage has been playing the Widowmaker, and he's been fine. But it's been weird to see them sort of move these roles around. And I also just think that the Fusion's the hotter team coming into this. There is some questions because the map pool is not ideal for Philadelphia. They have a lot of maps that they're not very good on. But again, that's sort of old data, so I'm not taking that too much into consideration. But in terms of the other thing is that in terms of in terms of the map pool too, it could go okay for Boston because Volskaya is in the pool and they are still undefeated on Volskaya, if I recall correctly. I can double check that real quick. But so there's certain maps that they might steal some wins off of, but overall I think that the Hanzo meta is going to be super good for Philadelphia. And after their Boston's like really poor stage 4, I don't really have a lot of confidence in Boston right now.
Okay. Right, in the other matchup then, LiNkzr, So Gladiators players against Spitfire. Obviously, Gladiators for the past couple of stages, one of the best teams in the Overwatch League. Spitfire, bizarrely, wins the first stage, looked very strong for the first couple of stages, and then also themselves had a very poor end to the stage overall in stage 4. What do you think of this matchup? I mean, it seems obvious, right? But do you believe in London? Do you think like the break gives them time to make this a really good match?
I think I'm not sure what London struggled with. I feel like Gladiators like steadily improving and steadily coming up like stronger and stronger. I feel like I would have to give the advantage to Gladiators just because they seem way more consistent at their pace of which they're like playing. Like I can't really say much about London because I have not figured out what has happened to the team.
I don't think anybody has, LiNkzr. So it is a bad map pool. It's not the best map pool for London either, especially with Oasis drawn in. But I don't think it's unwinnable for them either. It is important to note that Gladiators is 3-0 against London. So London's actually never beaten Gladiators, which I think is important to think about the matchup. My cat yelling at me. So the other issue I think for London is, again, they haven't ever figured it out. And the closest they looked to really good, weirdly, was a match that they lost in stage 4, which was against the Gladiators, where they won the first 2 maps and then got reverse swept. And in the first 2 maps, they were doing what London hasn't done consistently before, which is they were making the right hero swaps, making the right compositional swaps. And they won the first 2 maps relatively easily, but then they just fell apart and couldn't switch consistently after that. So if we look at Gladiators very good at switching compositions and strategies. London is very good individually, but they are not very good at switching strategies in the middle of the map. They haven't fixed this problem. They couldn't keep it up for a full 4-game series, I should say, against the Gladiators. So I think I'm probably going to have to say Gladiators on this one because the consistency for London in the ways that they need to be good in this meta around playing with different compositions hasn't been there. Also, they don't really have a Hanzo player. Look, Birdring and Prophet are both excellent. I think we should assume safely that one of them will be able to play Hanzo to a very good level, but there is also the question that we haven't seen it. I think they were down. I'm pulling this out number off the top of my head, but I think that Spitfire were only playing like Hanzo 1 to 2% of the time in stage 4. So they were on the very low end of Hanzo play overall.
Okay. One thing I forgot to mention, actually, because this is a detail I only found myself when I was looking, is the format for the playoffs is different as well. Because what it is
yes,
before you just played a series like you did in the regular season, whereas what happens now is you basically play a best of 3, but each match in the best of 3 is a best of 5.
I actually love this format.
So actually that also means that there's not, like, if Spitfire actually is the inferior team in this matchup, they will have to overwhelmingly play better if they're going to actually win the series. They're not going to be able to just get to a really close game 5 and then sneak that out like, oh wow, we got past. Like, you have to win 2 best of 5 series to get through here. So it's going to hopefully convincingly show who the best is.
Yes, and you also play on all the maps in the pool too. So we randomly drew maps, and so we have 10 maps and Nepal as a tiebreak. And so one best of 5 is 5 maps. The second best of 5 is the other 5 maps. And then the third best of 5 is the higher seeded team selects maps 1, 3, and 5, and the lower seeded team selects maps 2 and 4.
Yes.
So it's a pretty robust system, I think, and should get the best teams into the next round of competition. I've never seen Overwatch. Now, Overwatch started doing best of 3 and best of 7s. Most notably in Taiwan, in the Southeast Asia region, where Blank, the Australian team, was playing, and Flash Wolves. Before Overwatch League began, Blizzard started trialing to see how a best of 3 and best of 7 system would work. And I thought it was really interesting. And so we decided to keep with the best of 3 and best of 5s. And the reason why best of 5 instead of best of 7 is because, first off, I think 3 best of 5s is sufficient, in my opinion, to decide instead of best of 7. But also because 2 best of 5s. So one day we'll have the first best of 5, and the second day we'll have the second 2 best of 5. So if it goes to a third best of 5, you don't want to have it be like, obviously, like 14 games in a row if it's 2 best of 7s. So it keeps it a more reasonable length of time.
And then the one other detail is that the bracket is based on seeding as well. I actually like this. It's the same thing they use in the LCS, actually, which is basically, here's the shortest way to understand it. So the highest seed of the quarterfinals team is the one that will actually go and play Valiant rather than Excelsior.
Yep.
So the simplest way to think of that is, being as everyone is favoring Fusion to beat Boston, if Fusion wins, since they were the lowest seed, then whoever wins out of Gladiators and Spitfire would instead play the Valiant. So they're not like how the bracket would look now, where you'd think they'd play the Excelsior. But if Boston wins, then it will be Boston who is definitely playing the Valiant. So the bracket can actually like swap over. I actually think that's a good format to have as well, because it also means you don't get that scenario where there's like a massive upset. So for example, Fusion versus Uprising, actually on paper is a massive upset. You know, it's the third seed versus the last seed. But you don't want, in theory, them to ride an easier seed in the other sense, you know, of going over. So it's actually a good format to, again, make the semi-finals as comprehensive as possible. Right. What about the angle, though, for the Gladiator Spitfire match? That, like, every single time these teams have played, obviously Fisher does some, like, banter afterwards and, like, implies that, like, he's the reason why the Gladiators win, you know. But if he doesn't win in this particular match, and especially with this format, you can't really talk any shit anymore at that point in time, can you?
No, he would in fact lose when it matters. But I think that's been fun. I really applaud Fisher for going out there and doing that. He's been a great personality to have for the league.
LiNkzr, what do you think was the difference in Gladiators before Fisher and after him?
I think the biggest difference I noticed that they started becoming more flexible on what the players played and how they played it. Like, I think at first it was like Fisher was obviously like the arrowhead, you know, that like made the fight, kinda. There was always like some kind of like command where like Fisher would do something and then the team would do it around him, and then it slowly has like moved away from that a bit into something where like everyone has time to like get the resources to do something to win the fight, and it's like slowly evolving into a really interesting game style where like everything is very fluid for them. They're swapping heroes and like what kind of like attacks and defenses they will have.
Yes. Fisher is a leader of men. That's the thing. He like leads them in the battle. It's like the St. Swithin's Day speech to rouse the troops and bring them with him, you know. Then he goes in and then they hopefully win the battle. So, okay, what about... Do you think any of the teams in the quarterfinals actually have a chance to win the overall playoffs, LiNkzr? Is there someone you'd give like a chance to do it, or a hot tip?
I think my dark horse would be Gladiators. Like, I feel like Gladiators and Valiant, funnily enough, are two very similar teams in my opinion. Both of them have like excellent tanks, like DPS players who can pop off really hard, and like good supports. But I think Gladiators still, like, if this break is enough for them and they can like find their play style and like solidify, like reduce the mistakes that they individually do, I feel like they will be in a really good spot.
What do you think, Monty?
I think it's still London for me. I think this is a team that has been at the top, in theory could get back there. I think that, but again, it comes down to consistent team compositions, switching, I think is their biggest problem right now. If they could do that, then they should be able to beat the Gladiators because they have stronger individual players and they can challenge New York. I think they are the only hope to beat New York, honestly.
I kind of have to agree that like London, if they manage to figure out swap timings and like add to their strategies, I think they will be a really strong team again. But for some reason, it's like that's like much harder to work with than Gladiators.
Okay.
Like
that's true. Look, I don't think it's likely that London's going to do this.
I know, but
if they could.
Yeah, if they can do that, they will definitely contest New York. I agree.
Thing is, though, if the Gladiators do beat Spitfire, I hope Fisher already has some sort of like epic line prepared. Because I was thinking, right, what you need something that's on par with like the infamous infiltration quote when he won Evo and he was like, download complete. Like what you need to do is just do something like, you know, what do you think the key factor was for your team in winning the match? You just need to lean in and be like, main tank mismatch, just some shit. That's like the sort of shit that would ignite the crowd, and just that's my dream, at least, anyway. Right, okay. Before we end this segment, LiNkzr, do you have any parting words for everyone as we go into the Overwatch?
We didn't ask him who's going to win Overwatch League Season 1.
Well, he implied it was Valiant. He said he's the
I implied it was Valiant.
Are they going to win the...
I think they are. I think if they keep up the progress they had in Stage 4, they will be such a strong team. Like, especially with like Soon popping off and like Space working really well with Fate. I feel like they will win. I don't know. That's how I feel. I have a lot of trust in them. I
can tell.
Yeah. I mean, I love New York Excelsior to the core, Like, I loved playing against them, and like I think all the players are fantastic. But for some reason, it's like, in my mind, I think Valiant can win that.
What do you think is the way Valiant have been most to this point, where you're predicting them to win the first season?
I think like when we got 4-0'd by them, right? So obviously I might be a bit biased here, but I think what they have done to their team is something like they have like started to like fundamentally grasp like their like win conditions and like what they need to do to win not only the fight they're in, but the next fight after, I felt like huge amount of discipline from their players, in the match we played. And I don't know if that was like a one-off just for this stage. Like Boston had a really good stage, they went 10-0. So it could be just like that, and it could be Khan when they play in the playoffs. But if they can like keep that up, it's going to be a really strong team.
Okay, right. Last question, LiNkzr. Who if, like in theory, the team that wins doesn't have to have the MVP, but at the end of the playoffs, who's going to be the playoff MVP? Who would you guess?
I would guess it's Fisher. Like if he was in the contestation, right? Like I think
for the playoffs, though. I mean, just for the playoffs alone.
I think for playoffs alone, it would be Carpe.
Okay.
Like he would be the one to amaze everyone, I think.
Right. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Sure. Thank you for my sponsors, T-Mobile, DXRacer, and Turtle Beach. Thank you for all my fans, and thank you for having me.
That's all right.
Thanks, man.
Right, so we're back for another segment. We've got Volamel here. And what's interesting, Monty, is this is how you know that Overwatch as a game has progressed, has gotten bigger, has become more legitimate, just by watching Volamel appearances on this show. Because the first episode he came on, he looked like he was about to ask me, like scratching on his arms, if I had like $10 for some of that good that he was going to fucking go and get after the show. He had a full beard, like all fucking hoodie that was looked like you'd have to use the jaws of life to get it off him or something. Then after that, he just like had normal clothes on, he'd shaved somewhat. Now he's actually looking coiffured, he looks fucking slick. He actually looks like he's got his lock together, He's trying to figure out what's going on. He's even got a real headset and everything. He's moved up in the world, hasn't he?
I'm impressed.
Thank you.
It's a new phase of Volamel's existence, I guess. Was that just a down week? Do you have any?
No, I just wasn't shaving. I wasn't doing any cam work. So I was like, why not?
He was just let it grow, Monty.
See what happens.
It's just grinding.
Exactly. There's a period in your life when you're a content creator, especially when you're early in the game, where you're putting so much effort into the content that you get that sort of like, it's not an excuse, but the way you give yourself a mental breather is you just say like, I don't care about like superficial things like personal appearance and stuff. I'm all about the work. It's like, I'm just trying to do the best job I can. And then eventually you realize, actually, now that I'm pretty good at this, I could also look good as well. And then eventually, here's the thing, Volamel, if you can get to this last stage, this is the dream. Eventually, what you realize, because you have to understand, I'll give you a little bit of background. When the first ever major happened in CSGO, the tournament organizer for the first major was DreamHack, and DreamHack famously came up as a big LAN party, and they had like the gamer ethos. And so they explicitly told us for this first major in the email, like, you don't have to dress up in suits or anything. You can just wear whatever you feel comfortable in. So I literally thought, okay, that's a cool idea, actually. We're going to do things differently in CS. We're not going to try and pretend to be the NFL. So I wore a mixture of like hockey and basketball jerseys. It's just I thought it was cool, and showed I was like a gamer and I wasn't trying to pretend to be someone fake. But the response was so bad that in the future, basically to solve the problem, people like DreamHack used to just put in the emails like, please wear like at least like a dress shirt or some sort of like, smart trousers and stuff. So what happened was, at first, I was initially a bit annoyed by this, right? Because I thought, like, this is bullshit. That's not who I am, Why do I have to do this? But this is my point. Like I said, where eventually you think, I'll start to look a bit smart anyway. Then what you do, and obviously Monty's going to know about this, is eventually what you realize is, well, wait a minute. If we all have to wear these dress shirts and suits, but I'm balling out of control, stacking fucking chips to the ceiling, then that's actually a way I can also show dominance over other people in this business. Is they're going to come with just a very basic shirt. Like, for example, look at Janko in CSGO when he first came, the guy was coming out of Serbia. He was used to making like $500 for the whole event. He looked like he had the one suit on you buy to go to the prom. It was a bit awkwardly fitting, Now he looks like a baller. He's got that fucking big face like Big Ben on his fucking arm, strapped up with 6K rolling in there. That's the point. Eventually you want to show the newer caster who comes in. Like, you'll be nice to him. Hey, welcome to the crew. You show him you flash that fucking green face at him, give him the Listerine face. Oh, goddamn. And then you let him know that, listen, there's a few levels to this shit. And anytime you can pop out something like that, then you're at my level. So yeah, that's where you need to aspire to go to.
Acquire stacks.
I really like how Thorin had to use esports to discover how to dress well, and how dressing well is a status symbol. It's like without esports, Thorin would never have known that.
No,
I guess.
No. It's because here's the thing. I naively thought, Monty.
That was a very complicated explanation for a very simple concept.
No, because this is the point. I thought naively that it was about just like impressing women or something. I didn't realize actually it was a game to be played as well. And you were trying to beat other people, and in doing so, let them know that you're better than them and they'll never beat you. Now, if I'd have known that, if I'd have known you could tie narcissism in a good way into it, then I would have done it. Whereas I thought it was all about vanity. Whereas it's not about vanity.
So when are you going to take this into your personal life as well? Because the next step for you is realizing that you can actually do this on an everyday level and assert the same kind of dominance over everybody around you, which, by the way, is even easier in fucking California, where no one knows what a button-up shirt is, and all the tech guys are just like, yeah, I'm just going to wear a black t-shirt. It's pretty easy to be dominant in like the clothing, the elitist clothing game in California. It's amazing. People don't even know what to do with it either, because it's been so ingrained in this like Silicon Valley culture now that you just don't wear anything besides a t-shirt and jeans, that if you roll up, even just like with a tie with no suit jacket on, they get really confused and start treating you super nicely. Yeah. It's great.
It's because, unfortunately, in Silicon Valley, the only forms of like personal expression are just choosing your own gender. But to be fair, they put a lot of customization options into that part of the game.
So many choices.
So yeah, so many skins you can pick from, like different accessories. It's gotten wild at this point in time. They've even got an actual like scientific technology involved in it. But anyway, Volamel, speaking of expressing dominance, for so long it looked like a foregone conclusion that the New York Excelsior was going to win the Overwatch League. In fact, if you'd have told people the format, which we just mentioned with our last segment, which is in the playoffs, you basically play best of 3 of best of 5s. And so it's even more difficult to have like a wild upset win. If you'd have told people after like stage 2 or 3 that would be the format, it would also seem like, right, New York Excelsior is an absolute lock. They're going to win this league completely. Is that still the case? Is New York Excelsior going to win the playoffs?
I think so. When you look at what's like kind of happening behind the scenes with the patches, how we're kind of catching up into, I think it's 1.25, I believe. We're getting the Hanzo rework. We're getting a whole bunch of other changes. I think, I'll come out and say I think Libero probably is one of the better Hanzo players, if not the best Hanzo player coming all the way back from Apex. And I think I believe he's the only player that's had a strategy crafted around him throughout the regular season. So I think that they're going to really flex onto him if Hanzo is continually going to be one of those major picks. And from what we've seen in the open division for a little bit, I think it is going to be a huge big deal. And I think they're going to flex onto him quite a lot and use him when applicable. And I think they're going to kind of cruise. I don't think anybody's really going to touch them too terribly much. I think, you guys mentioned with the format, I think there's enough parity here to kind of really iron out exactly who's the best team at that moment in time. And I think New York's probably just going to kind of roll over people.
So Monty, that is always one, we've mentioned it on past shows, that has always been one of the ridiculous advantages that the Excelsior had. If you remember how stage 1 started, Libero actually looked like he was just going to be a bench player, and they'd bring him in sometimes, especially because obviously at the time they were figuring out how do we make a team without Flower, etc. Now, obviously, he's gone on to become fabulous Widowmaker. He's obviously been very good on the what do you call it? the non-hit scan DPS, I guess you would say.
Projectile.
It logically makes sense that he would be the player who'd pick up Hanzo, and unlike other teams, you're not going to have to make like Sabriel B go and practice it 24/7 and get what he's doing, right?
Like Volamel saying, he was always a Hanzo player. Going back to Meta Athena, really Meta Athena was, it's funny because as much as we see Widow Hanzo attacks on King's Row now, that was an Apex strategy for Meta Athena that was like a year ago, right? So double sniper is something that this team should be very comfortable running, and Libero should be very comfortable running in particular. So I think that the Hanzo play should be great with Libero. I totally agree with Volamel. They're very well set up for a playoff run, and I am very skeptical that another team's going to be able to beat them once they're back practicing heavily and back in form. So,
Volamel, with all that said, young LiNkzr on the last segment actually thinks Valiant's going to win, because I've noticed with players, one thing I'll give players credit for is, like, if I was a player, I would be quite delusional. Like, if an inferior team beat me, I wouldn't be like, you're better than me. I'd just be like, something happened in the game or I wasn't feeling it. But I've noticed generally players do give it up when they get beaten. And so whoever is the top of the standings at the time, they do tend to be like, that's the number one team. So he did pick Valiant as the team he thinks is going to win the playoffs, because obviously they won stage 4. They were the top team for a long while. They had fabulous seat, right? Why not LA Valiant? What's drawing you away from that? Because as we say with the format, if they really are the better team, they should win, right?
100%. I think, like I mentioned, there's just enough games to be played that we should have a very clear indicator on who exactly is whoever is the winner is going to be usually the best team. If you play like a best of 99, they should be coming out on top. This is the format to kind of best suit that. Why not the Valiant? I think. And it's not to kind of harp on the narrative. Oh, they're not flashy. Oh, they're the standard players. I think that they just don't. I just don't know exactly what they're going to do in this meta. We haven't seen Agilities previously play any of the heroes that I think are going to be really good. Specifically Hanzo, they don't necessarily have a hugely dominant sniper. We've seen Soon come into that role a little bit later into stage 4, and he's been all right. He did
play really well the longer the stage went on. He was very good in the playoffs.
It's been, I don't know if you want to even say that he's been inconsistent, but I think that it's been pretty good. I don't want to say it's great. It's not like Pine or Fleta or whoever else, Carpe, but it's been solid, right? He's been very, very serviceable, and he's been a great boon for that team. But I don't know if he's going to be able to match up and pair well against the likes of New York, even against maybe the likes of Philly. Granted, I believe they're on the same side of the bracket. I don't know exactly how that matchup's going to play. I think he's probably going to get tested against Carpe first with Philly. It'll be interesting, but I don't know.
Just to clarify, the way that works, Volamel, is it goes on the highest seed from the quarterfinals.
So New York will be playing Philly if they win.
Okay.
New York will play Philly because it's the 6th seed. So basically, it's a reseeding system. So the highest seed, after the quarterfinals take place, the highest seed will go to face the Valiant, and the lowest seed will go to face New York.
Okay. That makes a lot more sense.
So if Boston wins, they face the winner of Gladiators versus Spitfire. If Philly wins, then they face Philly, New York.
Gotcha. That makes it a little bit more understanding, I suppose. I'm not entirely too sold. I think that when we look at the format again, kind of doubling back to that format, it is kind of an endurance thing, because this is kind of a new thing in esports. We haven't had this kind of format before, and I think it is going to kind of push the players, and teams might want to look at flexing out of the bench, and I don't know that Valiant has that kind of flexibility on the bench. Their B team necessarily hasn't been the best in the world. So will they get fatigued? I can't imagine that they will. I think they've been they've had some pretty positive patterns throughout the entire kind of regular season, and I don't think they'll get too terribly fatigued, but I can't imagine that they won't be, tired at the end of this, or 10 games in one day. That's kind of rough.
Does it say something, Monty? Does it say something about Overwatch as a game in terms of where it is competitively at the moment, that a team like Valiant can win? And yet, even when they won that stage playoffs, I still didn't think any of their players really ever looked like the best player in the Overwatch League. That's one of the reasons why I think a lot of people feel like London could have a miracle run, because I still watched some of the games in stage 4, and even though London was losing a lot of them, there'd still be games where Profit and Just look fucking amazing, and like they do pop off. What does it say about Overwatch as a game that Valiant could be such a good team and could win so often without necessarily having the superstar names?
I mean, I think that Valiant has, as we discussed with LiNkzr, been getting better, but it's their teamwork and their coordination and their preparation that I think is really good for them. They're the most meta team. Like, they play all the meta strats. They rarely do something that surprises you, but what's so good about them is their execution on a team-wide level. And that's what's super impressive. And that's what I think is interesting to watch about the Valiant. As far as best in their positions, I don't think so. Any player would be considered the best in their positions. I think their probably strongest core is their tank line. I think Fate and Space, you could make an argument that the two of them are the best tank line, but I don't even know if I would be bold enough to do that when we have things like, maybe I put them second behind Mono and Meko, actually. I think it's probably pretty reasonable as a unit. Maybe you could make an argument that they were the best tank line overall, but I don't think either of them is the best main tank or the best flex tank. I think that's probably Gesture and Meko, or Fissure and Meko. I think Meko is like unquestionably the best flex tank. So I think those are the arguments that could be made.
Right,
but
in the first,
that's about it.
So in the quarterfinals, Volamel, we have Boston versus Philadelphia. Right, do you think Boston has a shot to win this?
So when we look at, again, the kind of patches that we're going to get, or the kind of catch up that we're going to be playing with the live server, there's quite a few changes that kind of lead me to wonder if Dive is going to become a little bit more popular than what it has been in the regular season, especially in Stage 4. And I don't know, it's difficult to say right now because we haven't seen anybody play in a tournament setting on this specific kind of set of patches. So I don't know exactly if Dive is going to be kind of vogue again. But if it is, I could see Boston actually having a little bit of a resurgence. I think towards the end of Stage 4, they looked okay. But I think it's going to be, if Dive is good, then Boston can be good. But if it isn't, I think they're really going to be hurt by the lack of a Widow presence on that team. I think Mistakes has been okay. Again, I think he's been very serviceable, but can he match up against, the rest of the cast? I just don't think it's comparable to the rest of the players in the league. Again, it's going to be kind of cruxed on Dive and if Dive's coming back or not.
If it does, Monty, does that give them a crack at it?
I mean, potentially, but I still think like there's going to be enough other factors that are going to be holding them back. So I certainly think it would be a bonus if it was, but also at the same time, like the new Hanzo is so strong. If a tank dives in too, and especially because of how fast those tanks can die if they get too aggressive, that the Hanzo might cause a lot of problems for Dive. Okay,
right. Of the playoff teams, Volamel, which team do you think should have the best Hanzo?
Can I count New York?
Yeah, yeah, of course.
Yeah, I think it's Libero, New York. I think outside of Libero, I could see Carpe having a pretty good Hanzo.
Those would be my two picks.
Yeah, it would be him or Carpe. I think Carpe is going to have the kind of wanton aggression that he's shown in the past, especially in the playoffs, where in a pinch he can just kind of flank on Route 66 and get a double kill with Widow, or let it be Hanzo, whatever it is. He just kind of is that clutch factor for that team. So yeah, it'd be Libero or Carpe for me.
Okay. So moving to the other matchup then is Gladiators against Spitfire. Obviously one team massively up over the last couple of stages, one team sliding down. What do you think of this matchup?
Again, I think it's one of those similar to how Boston is favored a little bit more if Dive kind of comes back. If it does, London could at least have one composition to choose from. But my kind of take on this meta right now, just kind of theory crafting, is that this could be very similar to Stage 4, very, very open. There could be lots of compositions that could be used. We see quad tank being used even more now in contenders in Korea. It's one of those comps that could be peppered in. So it looks to be quite open, and I don't know that London has any of the strength elsewhere to kind of flex off and combat Gladiators if they were to kind of toss in some odd strategies here or there. So I think they're kind of one-dimensional. If they can run Dive, they're going to run it, and if by chance they use this break to really push and kind of tighten up their Dive, they could have a chance, but I don't see it happening. I don't think they'll have a strong performance, I'll say that.
Well, it's also if they can run dive, they will run it. I would also argue that if they can't run dive,
they'll run it anyways. Sure.
So I think it depends on how fast London can adjust.
Now, one thing though, Monty, is that anyone who knows the history of Korean esports knows that there is a big difference between teams that are very good in the group stage and then the actual playoffs. Like famously in a lot of the League of Legends competitions, people could get upset in a group stage, but once they got to the best of 5, once they got to the playoffs, once they had the full week, 2 weeks, whatever it is to prepare, and especially when they zone in on one particular opponent, they can come at a drastically higher level. Obviously, Spitfire has had its issues with coaching. Does that offset this historical trend? Do you think they come out much better than Stage 4?
So the problem with Spitfire that I see is that they haven't made the necessary adjustments. And the problem of them not being able to switch compositions fluidly and effectively was there since Stage 1. That was always their problem. And the issue for them is that problem with this meta is basically even more pronounced than it was previously, because now you don't have the option of just running Tracer, Genji, Winston, Diva, and diving on any map. You must change. And they've been slow to adapt to that. And also, you would have thought that they would have, after some of the members were cut from the roster and they winnowed down the number of players, and then when they had to win some of their matches to maintain their seeding and their position in the playoffs, they had to keep winning matches until basically the last week of the season to even guarantee them to be in the playoffs, that they would have played with more of a fire under their ass by cutting the number of players on the roster to say that these are our starters, these are the people who are going to play all the time, solving the synergy issues. Now, none of that solved their problems. So I can't imagine that it's going to be easy to solve those problems in the next 3 weeks. I could be wrong, but I would like to be wrong. I really would. But at this point, I think it's too late.
Volamel, one thing that has underwhelmed me a bit about the Gladiators is they've been in stage playoffs, but then they never win in the stage playoffs. Does this team have the opposite effect? Are they better in the regular stage than they are in the playoffs?
I think the kind of chaotic nature that the regular season can provide, I think definitely was the kind of played to their benefit a little bit more. But I wouldn't say that they relied on it too terribly much. I think they used it to their advantage every once in a while to kind of cause an upset here and there. And then you have to wonder exactly how serious some of the teams later on in Stage 4 were taking it when they knew they weren't, able to play in the playoffs. Were they there to play spoiler? Were they there just to try out, other sides of the roster? Try out their bench. It's up for discussion, but I think that they use the regular season to their advantage and got some upsets where in this format where they have to play a best of 3, a best of 5s.
Yes,
it's a lot of games. That's a lot of games you got to go through. So I don't know that necessarily that they're going to cause any upsets here in the playoffs.
All right, Monty, if the Gladiators win and Fusion wins, then we get the Battle of LA again in the semi-finals. Now, obviously, the Gladiators ended up playing against Valiant in the last stage playoffs, and Valiant won again, as they had in the regular season. If that match happens, does it go any differently this time around? Is Valiant just the wrong team for the Gladiators?
I think the problem is with that matchup is that Gladiators gets a lot of their strength from trying to run strategies or compositions and catching people off guard or switching very quickly. But with Valiant, they play the meta super well, so they're able to counter by oftentimes just switching out agilities or fate on the main tank. And that means that they don't have to change very much to quickly adapt to the Gladiators' plans. And they're so strong at running a sort of a standard core meta strategy that I just don't think that the Gladiators are able to catch them off guard. This is also why the Gladiators is a good matchup against London, because they can force London to change composition. If London's bad at that, then they don't. But the Valiants have proven very, very good at exploiting the Gladiators in this way, or making the Gladiators in the regular season, the one that went to 5 games, they made the Gladiators use some very weird strategies where the Gladiators got mind-gamed into trying to overemphasize certain compositions that weren't going to work, I think, in an attempt to catch the Valiant off guard, and it just wasn't effective. So you're not going to be able to outsmart compositionally the Valiant in the way that Gladiators can against other opponents, and I think that's going to be their big issue. And I don't think they have the teamwork and coordination that the Valiant does. So when they can't trick people or use that sort of more protean quality to their advantage, that they end up not doing so hot. So I think Valiant's a bad matchup is that.
Okay, right. Volamel, when we talk about the favorites, obviously New York Excelsior, Valiant on paper has to be considered.
Sure.
Right. Monty still thinks as a dark horse, if London Spitfire, if everything came together, they have the tools to do it, maybe they could go on some epic run. Obviously the team most people always saw should have been the nemesis, the foil of the Excelsior. On the other side of the equation, before the stage playoffs for stage 4, I think a lot of people might have said the Gladiators team. They seemed like a team that had a very high ceiling. If they can go wild in a game, they could potentially beat anyone. No one, though, at this point in that time, seems to be thinking that can happen for the Fusion, though. Now, obviously, a beloved team of a lot of the analysts, because again, they were perceived to have a massive cap to their play. All these fabulous players, very deep team. Why not Fusion as a chance to go all the way?
At this point, we are kind of, the cream has risen to the top, and I just wonder exactly how well their backline is going to hold up in this kind of aggressive format. I think that we're going to see quite a lot to kind of double back to Monty's point. I think we are going to see a very, not a wide shift in the meta, but I think we are going to see some more compositions come out and force teams to play something a little bit more different than what they're used to. And of course, you're going to see kind of different counter picks coming in for the best of 5 format. You're going to see some odd stuff. And I don't know if that, if I hold that backline as a high, as high as anybody other's team. I don't know exactly if they're as they meet the mark, if that makes sense. Same thing with the tanks. I think they're very good in the regular season. They looked again the playoff caliber, but I just don't see them hitting the same mark as the other tanks. I don't see them making the same kind of plays as a Gesture or a Fisher or a Mono. And I just don't see them outside of the DPS lineup. I think they have great DPS players. And again, I think Carpe is going to definitely come up and put them on his back every once in a while. I think he has some crazy clutch factor to him. But outside of that, I just don't see how they make a run personally.
Right, Monty, surely Philadelphia Fusion should be a team who have, as you referred to with the Gladiators, like a protean quality. They had all these different great players. They could swap in and out. Why can't they be a team that can adapt to whatever inter-meta we're going to have?
Because they're a great collection of individual players that doesn't have fantastic internal teamwork or communication, it seems like. Like the lineup is absolutely stacked with talent. They just don't have the same coordination that a team like the Valiant has, right? But I don't think, or Boston had at one point in time when it was a more appropriate dive meta and before this latest meta came around and whatever issues they had with losing Crusty occurred. I think that Philadelphia is a brute force team. And so much about Philadelphia recently has come down to the following question. Is Carpe popping off? If yes, win match. If no, lose match, right? It's pretty crazy.
Actually speaking, since you said that adjective protean, Monty, which obviously stems back etymologically to the god Proteus from Greek mythology, who was someone who could shapeshift in any different quality. Now, here's an interesting detail, right? Is that
about Proteus?
In the very early days of my gaming days, I actually didn't pick the alias Thorin. What would happen was I would play Quake 2 or whatever it would be, and you'd pick a random name each time. And in fact, since back then, obviously there was no established scene, you could pick whatever you wanted in the game server. And Proteus was one of the names I actually had as one of my aliases. And I was like, and there's the thing, every few games I was switching it up because like a lot of people, I was about 18 at the time. So I was a lost individual, I was trying to reach into fiction. I was calling myself like Mersault and stuff. I was a poser. I was trying to reach for more than I was, which by the way is the secret to becoming more as a person. You know, you have to fake it till you make it. And then what happened was, after I had the name Proteus, I then randomly picked the name Thorin, but then I forgot, I've told this part of the story before, I forgot to change it, and then I'd played too many games and everyone just referred to me as Thorin at that point in time. And so at the time I thought, just stick with it. Now, obviously what I didn't think as well was, when you move on to your career, there have been people like Richard Lewis, for example, who gave up their alias early enough that a lot of people wouldn't even know what his alias was. It was actually Dr. Gonzo. His was an allusion to the Hunter S. Thompson character from Fear and Loathing. So what's funny, though, is that considering I originally did have the name Proteus, so I was switching around to all these different aliases. But obviously now I'm absolutely trapped by the name Thorin. I can't give that up. I can never change again, Monty. And in fact, now it's almost like, you know that...
I see your irony, yes.
You know that great saying that it says that like fame is a mask that eats the that eats the face or something like that. I actually feel like that now, because now it's like, well, I was just, you know, that was just a character all along, guys. What? It won't come off. Help! It's fused to my like, and I have no choice now, Monty. I have to be this character.
Also, I think it's extra appropriate because for Jung and Jungian psychology, Proteus is one of the symbols of the unconscious, and now you've sublimated Proteus underneath the Thorin persona, right?
Exactly. That's the thing, though. Unlike everyone else,
reference for like 0.1% of people.
Unlike everyone else, Monty, I didn't like just ignore the shadow self, etc. In fact, some would say it overtook me and I just locked away somewhere and it's running wild. But you know what? It's working for now. So
I do believe that your higher consciousness is imprisoned somewhere deeper within yourself. The shadow just standing there with the keys, laughing at it behind the locked bars.
Well, you know, that's for another episode. Anyway, right, Volamel, to close up the episode, what about this? Who do you think will be the MVP of this playoffs? Remember, it technically doesn't have to be someone from the winning team. Could be someone from just the finals or whatever.
Very true.
So just who would you pick? Who do you think is going to be the impact player in the playoffs?
If I'm gonna, be on brand and be consistent with what I've been saying, I have to give it to Libero. Yeah, unfortunately, it's boring, but at the end of the day, he's shown to be one of the better Hanzo players, like I mentioned. Historically, he's had previous experience on it. New York actually has previous experience playing with it because they played it on Hanamura A. That was their kind of execute default for every attack. So I don't see anybody else outside of him. Again, it could be Carpe, it could be somebody like Birdring or Prophet if they just have a miracle run. But highest percentage probably Libero. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That'll be the end of this segment. Cheers, Matt.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you.
Take care, guys.
Right, we're back for another segment. This time we are joined by Manneten from the Florida Mayhem. I got a weird deja vu moment. It felt like I'd said that before once. But anyway, so
we successfully pushed the record button this time.
Apropos of nothing, Manneten, this is a really weird immediate question to ask you. But when we had Reinforce on the show a few episodes ago, I was asking him about how culture affects winning teams. And so in winning teams, people think of Koreans in many games as the best. And obviously their culture stresses like hierarchy and, do your job, do your duty, don't complain as much. So Sweden obviously has a very long history in esports games, team games like obviously Overwatch, but more famously Counter-Strike. And so the positive sides that people might have seen would be teams tend to work very well as a social group. They tend to have very good team play within their squads, partly because of these factors. You get people who work well together, people who fit. There's not a lot of bristling egos like, for example, the French scene has often had in games like Counter-Strike and other team games where sometimes they'll have fabulous players, but they just put together a bunch of skilled players and hope they can kind of keep the lid on the cauldron while it's rattling away. So I asked Reinforce, is there a negative aspect to that though? Because obviously since Florida Mayhem hasn't been doing as well, does Swedish culture impact some of their results, and tell us some story about that? And his theory was that perhaps the fact that in this scenario, Swedish people won't be as critical of each other. Like they won't kind of be a bit of an asshole as a teammate. They won't tell a guy like, hey, you fucked up. You're not doing a good job. Like you're not doing your role correctly. Is there anything to that in the Florida Mayhem? Do you vibe with his theory at all?
Yeah, for sure. I think it goes back all the way to like contenders misfits. But during contenders, we obviously did so well. So no one really had to take that role. But in Florida Mayhem, everyone is trying to be nice all the time. Everyone thinks that, if you're not a good teammate, you're going to get shit-talked and then eventually going to get benched or something. But the truth is, you have to take like harsh criticism. That's how you get better. And no one really on our team decided to do it.
And your coaches were being the harsh critics that you needed either?
I mean, not really harsh, but I mean, Mineral is really good at giving like mid-map or like between-map feedback. And then when Ryder came, he didn't really bring the Korean culture fully. Like he always believes in like a positive environment, of course, but try to adapt to us. Then like I had a meeting with Ryder, and he said like when he coached in Korea, like sometimes players started crying because like he was so like harsh in their team. Like they did everything they could just get better, you know. But here it's like it's too nice, I think.
What I love about that as well, right, is he must have really wondered, right, because obviously he came into your team had a lot of struggles, and he's probably like, you know, this is very different, you know, in Korea players were crying, and I can only assume like Zuppe and Zappis were just like, why would the salt water run from their eyes? Like these guys don't even know what the fuck that means. Like, different world, mate, different culture. You don't even know what we're talking about. During the season, so one of the problems the Florida Mayhem obviously had was at the beginning you only had 6 players. You didn't have any subs. You just had the 6 players and a coach. You added a coach. You added obviously one of the Finns. You added the 2 Korean players. Was it a downside to start without extra players? Is that something like you didn't know going to an Overwatch League? Did you only learn it during the season? What would you say to that?
I mean, going into the season, we expected to be at least top 6, like looking at the roster and how we played in contenders. Then when we got into it, I think you got hard on some players, only being 6 and 1 coach, especially when you're starting to do bad. It's where like you can't really swap a player and see if that works better. Maybe the synergy is off, and it's very hard to fix that when you're only 7 people.
Going into the playoffs, who do you think the best team in Overwatch is?
New York, Excelsior.
You're not concerned by them losing the stage and giving up some games during the regular part of the last stage?
I still think they're the best fundamentally and skill-wise mostly. I think Valiant is very close though. Okay.
Right. One of the first round matchups is the number 3 seed versus the 6, which is Philadelphia versus Fusion, Boston versus Philadelphia rather, Uprising and Fusion. And in terms of record, because obviously that's for the whole stage, the seeding, Philadelphia Fusion, actually not a bad record. Boston Uprising, fabulous season record, but started to dip off at the end. Do you think Boston wins this match?
If I had to pick, I would probably go with Fusion, because I hope they play more Snillo. I think Snillo is insanely good.
Okay.
Why would you think they would play more Snillo in this meta?
I've heard he has been playing a bit more Brigitte. I think maybe they can get him like the Tracer Brigitte role and kind of flex around that.
Okay. So it's not just going to be the old Boston Uprising, like just continue to run dive and just hope it works somehow.
Oh, they would get shattered then.
Okay.
So it's interesting that you think they should run more Snillo, because Snillo obviously hasn't been a feature of the Fusion basically at all in stage 4, despite looking pretty good earlier once he turned 18 and was eligible to compete. So that would be a pretty, I think, big change for them, but I would love to see it for sure.
I think maybe it has something to do with them getting like Hot Basaro as well. Maybe easier to play with Carpe together with those 2. If they go back to Poco Fraga, I think Snillo would be a better fit because Snillo Fraga is extremely good together.
That's true. They did have a lot of synergy with his lurking style and then Fraggy jumping back to help him, right? Because Snillo a lot of the time would be on maps, he would be behind enemy lines and trying to like intercept respawns. And that was a very unique aspect of Philly's strategy, was that Snillo would be there trying to get people as they were respawning and rejoining the team, and Fraggy would just jump in and they'd 2v1 that person.
Yeah, so I'm playing with Snillo in like Sweden tryouts. He's very flanked and he's very good at like setting up plays, and he always seems to get behind his enemy team in a way that they don't know that he's there. Like usually, you know that Tracer's behind you, you can probably like hold it, but he somehow gets in there without them knowing it.
Right, with the way that the playoffs works, Manneten, like it's also got a seed component. So since Philadelphia is the last seed, if they win their match, they actually have to play against New York Excelsior next. Like they have no choice. Yeah. As a result, most people would expect, even if they beat Boston, they stop their run there. Do they have a shot? Do you think they could go all the way?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's more about them overperforming, I guess, in a bit then. Like they need to have Carpe on fire, of course, and then like his duo partner being really good, and then I'm not sure if they're gonna play Fraggy or if they're gonna play Hot Pasado. It's kind of hard to say in that sense, but yeah, they definitely have a chance.
Okay. Right. What about the other matchup then? The Gladiators versus the Spitfire. What are you thinking of this one?
That's one as well. Like, how well is Birdering gonna play? Is he gonna be stage 1 Birdering? Is he gonna be kind of like off semi-good Birdering? I think it's gonna be a very even match, actually.
Okay. Does it not bother you that basically the Gladiators always beat the Spitfire, and that was even when the Spitfire was actually pretty good?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think Gladiators has the edge. But I think if Birdering can just go back to stage 1 Birdering, I think anything can happen in that game.
Well, I think that's everybody's feeling, but what are the odds that you think that actually occurs are?
I don't know, man. I mean, like, we rarely screen Spitfire. At the end, at least.
Okay. Right. What about the Gladiators then? Because the problem with the Gladiators team is sometimes they've looked really, really good, but no one who's come on this show so far has picked them to win the league or to say that they're going to go all the way to the final, etc. So, do you buy them as a very good team? If they are a very good team, why not a team that could win the Overwatch League?
That's a tough one. I mean, I think like they obviously have very good players, and I think Bijou Fisher is like a top 3 tank duo for sure. But I think they kind of lack like the fast flexibility. Like they don't really have like this Brigitte Tracer player that can play Widow in some cases. I feel like they kind of lack that. Like they have Surfer, but I don't think Surfer really plays Brigitte or Tracer too much. Like he's obviously extremely good at Widow, but
I mean, that's Hydration's job on that roster, right? Is to play the Brigitte.
Yeah.
So.
But I mean, if you compare Hydration, you're not going to see him like go to Tracer if it's needed. While you can see it like Profit, he could play Brigitte, Tracer, Widow. Tvik who can play all those roles. You have, let's see what else I have here. You have Soon can play most of those roles. Oh, I just don't see Hydration as someone who can flex from Brigitte to Tracer off the Widow on some maps.
No, that's why recently they've been having Surefour play the Tracer when they need it in stage 4, because he's the one who could actually play both the Widow and the Tracer on the lineup. And without Asher in to take over that Tracer, they've had to figure out other ways. But yes, I agree. They don't have the strongest Tracer play at the moment. But Asher didn't play at all in stage 4, so there's a possibility they might bring him back to the playoffs.
Could come in.
Monty, you'll appreciate this. I actually did have a player when I was setting up the guest list for this episode who I messaged and I asked him, did you want to come on? And he said like, nah. He said I would come on, but I don't think there's any point. I think it would just be like another hydration episode. And I was just like, fair play. I said like, understandable, good day. Like, at least he knew in advance. You got to know yourself, Monty. That's the secret, as the Greeks, in fact, told us many, many moons ago. So, okay, what about this then? Since you said New York is the best team, Manneten, Valiant in theory is going to have the harder semi-final if Fusion wins against Boston. They're going to get either Gladiators, who obviously we already know is a good team, or if Spitfire can make it past Gladiators, but presumably Spitfire's in good form. Is the LA Valiant going to be in the final of the Overwatch League?
Yeah, I think so for sure.
What makes them good?
Space and Fate is, I would say they're the best tank duo in the game by far.
Okay. What's impressed you about them?
They're so consistent. Like, I don't think Space is ever really caught off guard in the point where he just loses a point. Like, he's always there. He's extremely consistent. He's a very confident player despite his young age. He's always like there to engage with his bomb when it's needed and make the plays.
Okay. Do you think the Valiant can win Overwatch League?
Yeah, I think so. It all depends on how good New York actually is when they're like full tryharding and full prepared. We haven't seen that in a while.
If New York turns up at like 10 out of 10 level, the Valiant won't beat them? I
don't think so. I think if New York has played like they have in the past and fully prepared, I think it's going to be very hard to beat them.
Okay. What about that, Monty? If does Valiant have like a fifth gear? Can they just be unbeatable no matter what?
I think they've been consistently getting better. And we talked about this earlier in the show, but I do think Soon showed up in a big way in the stage playoffs, which is encouraging because I think they needed more out of their DPS players. And Agilities has also been getting better and better. So if the fifth gear is soon becoming one of the most dominant Widowmaker players in Overwatch League, then perhaps that's it. But that would require him to play at a level we've never seen. But we shouldn't really dismiss that out of hand, because also Valiant have ended the season playing at a level that we haven't seen them as a unit play at. So again, I do think like the big difference is they have the coordination of New York. So what does Valiant have when we compare them to NYXL? They have the coordination now. Their in-game shot calling, target selection, strategy changes are all excellent. They play a very solid fundamental style of Overwatch. But the question then becomes, can their individual players have monster performances? And I think with Fate in Space, we've seen big performances. And I think we're starting to see better performances out of their DPS. But is that enough to carry them over the finish line? Because basically, like, they'd have to have some hugely clutch play by multiple players to really even be in consideration of beating a full-powered New York. Now, if New York wasn't sandbagging, which seems very unlikely, and they were just bad at this meta or suddenly got bad for some reason, then we've still seen the individual playmaking capabilities of New York, and we know that their coordination can be better because it has been significantly better in the past, as is their preparation for matches. Should that be the case, should we see a similar New York with perhaps slightly better team coordination? I think it could be a very close series between New York and Valiant. But if New York goes back to their old form, unless Valiant does somehow hit a higher level, I think it's going to be hard for them.
Yeah, I think so too.
That's one thing where I'm not really on board in the Valiant train. Like, I do think as a team they look really good, and I have to assume the coaching staff must have done a fabulous job with the squad. Yeah. Obviously bringing in Space. I mean, obviously you had to wait till he got old enough, but that was like the missing piece in the end. It's taken them another level.
Space and Custa too, Custa as well.
Yes, yeah. But when I think of teams that are going to be like a champion, and I think of how tough this format is, like you have to win a best of 3, a best of 5s. If they play against the New York Excelsior, then New York Excelsior play well. Like, I don't see a world in which Agilities is going ham over like 10 to 15 maps and you're winning that trophy. Like, I'd love to believe it was possible, but I think
like Agility's like, he's
a lot of games to play well in.
He's also so young. I mean, you look at Agilities and his growth, and you think in a couple of years this player is probably going to be super good. But when you're comparing him to a player like Libero that just has way more professional Overwatch experience than Agilities does, and like tournaments under his belt at Apex and now being on the NYXL, he's just an older player that has more experience. So I don't think it's Agility's fault. I just think that he is very recently 18, is going to grow into this role over time, and has already shown demonstrable improvement, right? So I don't know. And the Valiant fans have been annoying recently, because a lot of their complaints are, people saying that I and other people on the Overwatch broadcast team, like Uber, have been saying that they don't really pass the eye test. Like, for some reason, it's just very hard to believe in the Valiant if you're an expert in the game. And it's not that they lack fundamentals. And I think, if anything, people take this negatively. Like, they think, oh, the Valiant are good. Really, what I think this says is, look at how fucking good their coaching staff is to get them to this point, right? If I was a Valiant fan, I wouldn't be mad about that. I'd be saying, wow, look at how much we improved. We have a sick coach. Maybe if we get other players, maybe we can like attract some like top level star players next season, because we've shown how good our coaching system can be and how effective we can be. They're like 1 or 2 pieces away from being a truly amazing team. And they've done very well so far. And the whole thing has been, the Valiant have been very good. They just, like I said, they're just, because of they needed more of that playmaking or star like potential, especially at their DPS. And we did start to see that towards the end of stage 4, to be fair. But I think like you make a couple trades with this team and this coaching staff, and you've got something really good on your hands.
Put it this way, imagine this world, right? Imagine the exact same Valiant team, but instead their Genji player is like, who are you? So he's old enough, he comes, like, already they could be the best team in the league.
Yeah, look at what happens if they had gotten Architect or something like that, or if they made a trade, or they had Libera. Like, you look at some of these players and you think, okay, well, maybe they're just like one little step away from being a top tier contender, because their coaching staff has shown what they can do with the raw pieces. And if you had, I think, slightly better raw pieces, or slightly more experienced raw pieces, like I said about Agilities, if Agilities was getting the coaching while being on the bench behind a player who had more experience, maybe in a year or 2, he would be a player that would be excellent as a top tier starter. So I don't know. I think the Valiant's attitude is really weird because this team has gotten so much better over the course of
If
the
anything,
last
they're
couple of months.
overachievers. It's actually a compliment,
Yeah.
like you said. Like
Yeah.
with the pieces they have. Look, let me ask you this, Valiant fans. Even if you knew how good Space was, you're telling me that you would pick that lineup on paper to win a stage playoff and now be a contender to go to the final and maybe win the whole Overwatch League? Would you fuck? Get out my face. They are overachievers. It's fabulous. But just because you're a fan of them doesn't mean they have to be the best, do they? Come on. Learn from the TSM fans. Don't become like them. Learn from them. Learn their lesson. Don't become like that wretched hag looking back on their glory days.
But see, Thorin, the difference is that, you know, with localization, the thing about Overwatch sports is that some fans, you know, I at least have more, I suppose, sympathy for fans in Overwatch because, you know, sometimes like it's just about where you're from and you want to support your local team and you're born there and you have some sense of like identity with the region, right? That's why I'm a Denver Broncos fan, right? Growing up in Colorado, I have an affinity. I've watched the team for many of years, appreciate the history. So whether they're good or bad, you know, I appreciate and I'm a fan of the team. Literally with Overwatch League, you can have the same thing, people like supporting teams from their region. But the crazy thing, this is a digression about TSM fans and other esports fans who don't have localization, is that you have to choose to be a fan, right?
Yes.
And they choose to align themselves with the other TSM fans and the TSM brand. That to me is the real mindfuck, right? Like it's like you're not born into being a TSM fan.
No.
You choose that path. You choose that TSM life, and that for me never makes sense.
Exactly. Listen, we all love Star Wars Return of the Jedi. You can always, even at the last moment, you can turn back to the light side. You can come back. You can turn it all around. And we're all waiting for you. We're all pulling for you as well. And at the end, even though you will die and people just remember you as a TSM fan, it'll be like, you already did. You saved me. Like, that's what could happen to you. Like, you're wrecked. Don't worry. You did ruin your life supporting TSM. But anyway, right, Manneten, to close up this segment.
No, I have another important question.
Sorry, okay.
Do you support my initiative to change the Florida Mayhem's colors to aqua and neon pink? Which is okay. So you want that to happen? Okay.
Yes, I want it now.
You want it now? All right. So everybody should tweet at Ben Spoons and Florida Mayhem and tell them to change the colors because this is my main initiative. I can't stand your colors. I really just wish you had sick colors like 80s themed Miami Vice colors. That would be great.
Yes, the skins would be sick as well.
The skins would be fucking great. All right, okay, I'm done with that. That was my personal Florida Mayhem campaign moment.
Right, Manneten, who do you, if you just for the playoff run alone, who would be the MVP of this playoffs? Do you think?
I mean, if Hexagrams wins, which I think they will, say Babybay for sure.
Say Babybay? Why? Why him over Jodak, who's most people's favorite?
Every time they go into playoffs, say Babybay it's another level.
That's true. He is very clutch.
Yeah. Like, doesn't matter what the time is, what the score is, Babybay is always there to clutch and feels like you can't do anything against it.
Sure. Right, I think we'll just leave it at that. Do you have any final words?
Thank you for having me, and sorry for being late.
No problem, no one technically knows that, so you've accidentally revealed that. So,
were you late?
Who knows? You were right on time as far as I'm concerned.
Yep. So, my watch was wrong.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thanks, man.
Okay, we're back for another segment, and we're joined now by Babybay, DPS player of the San Francisco Shock, at least for the first few stages, not always towards the end, but he's here now.
Hey, he got a lot of playtime in stage 4. That's not true.
He did. He got some. When it didn't matter.
Stage 3 was the vanishing of Babybay. Sure. Stage 4 was the return of Babybay.
So here's the thing. I actually saw in some interviews that came out today, at the time of recording Babybay, where you were talking about this aspect, where in the early days of the Shock, I mean, to be honest, the team obviously wasn't that good. Like, a lot of the players that were in the team at the time are not in the starting lineup anymore. And you did actually have a lot of the responsibility on your shoulders, and you were like, you had to carry sometimes. The only thing is, though, to be a good teammate now, I saw you did that, like, I think some bullshit thing where you like sort of span it like, oh yeah, the pressure of having a carry was real tough, man. They needed me to be so fucking good every game. But it's better now that the team's here and it's the team now. What was it really like at that point in time? In a way, it must have been individually sort of satisfying, right? To still be doing well.
I mean, it was, but then like I'm the type of player that I really like to win no matter what. So I don't really care how good I'm doing if we're not winning, you know? So it like really started getting to me, and it like just like slowly by slowly, it just was like digging me down, and like, you know, I'm starting to lose a little bit of confidence. Like you could see it in my play. My Widowmaker was becoming like a little bit worse, you know, because Widowmaker is so like confidence heavy, I feel like, you know. So like yeah, it was cool being in the spotlight about, oh, I'm the best player on Shock, but it doesn't matter if you're the best player of a team that's not good, you know, like team that's not going anywhere, you know. So like we didn't make any playoffs, you know, like it's like it doesn't matter if I pop off, you know. So like none of that matters to me. I just want to have the best team, and I want to like go to the playoffs and actually, you know, go somewhere, you know, do something. So like it just like brought me down a little bit, you know. But yeah, I came back, you know.
You did, okay. And you did very well in stage 4. Yeah. And I think like, so has your attitude, I mean, you're talking about that you just want to win, and that's the most important thing to you, whether or not you're doing individually well or not. But as we kind of come through Overwatch League, many teams have seem to have arrived at the conclusion that having multiple DPS players and swapping them out is the best way to play the game. Now, at the start of the season, you and many other players were basically in 100% of the time, and now most teams kind of play like DPS by committee, where they'll switch in players in and out. Do you think that this is the best way going forward? Do you feel? I'm sure when you were originally like taken out of the lineup, you probably felt bad because you were in 100% of the time before. Have you come to grips with having this like more in and out DPS system? Do you think it's the best way for most teams to play Overwatch?
I don't think it needs to be like that, because there are players that can play like, you know, like Genji and Widow and stuff like that. Genji, Widow, and Fair, like Architect, you know. So it's like it's like
very few can.
But like I don't think it's bad though. I think it's a good system. I think like I think it can be a very good system. It's pretty cool. Like and like if we had like maybe a projectile player from the start, and I could just focus on like Widow, you know, just hit scan in general from like the get-go, maybe like, you know, who knows how good I would have been, you know, like at my role. So, you know, it's cool to think about, because I had to learn, like I'd never played Pharah before. I had to like just have like a decent Genji to pass by, you know, on like the certain times when we needed it. So like it was like you know, I had to like learn all these new heroes while like trying to pop off. It was pretty hard, but you know, I think it's doable with time. Like you can make one player like an ultimate DPS flex god. I mean, Crusty made Dreamcasper that, you know, in a way. So I think it's possible, and I don't think it's I don't think it's that bad, you know, to have one guy play like every map, or maybe like a duo play like every map.
Well, obviously, one of the big moves of the Overwatch League, even though your team didn't make the playoffs, and obviously it was too late for that cycle. Yeah. Obviously, one of the big moves was Crusty coming over to join the coaching staff. And funnily enough, this just shows how, as the Overwatch League went on, people started to learn the importance of the coaching staff. Because obviously, coaches don't have the same name value as stars. And so for a long time, when Boston was very good, people didn't know that the Crusty guy was part of the reason behind it. But since he left, people saw Boston had their issues. Your team picked it up. What has the Crusty effect been?
Dude, I didn't even know Crusty was on Boston. I didn't even know who he was until he joined our team. And then I'm like, wow, no wonder why the Boston's so good, dude. Like, he's actually like crazy. Like, I just like don't understand. Like, he just knows how to play the game like 100%. And, you know, we were very lost on how to play Overwatch, you know, like even just running a normal dive comp, like we had no idea what we were supposed to do. We had no idea what Super's role was, what my role was, you know, or Sinatra's and Dante's role was. And like, you know, Sleepy didn't know when to push aggro, stuff like that. Just like these small things that he just taught us how to play that like make like a huge difference. And like that was only within like a month's time, you know. Even though we had a worse record in stage 4 than stage 3, like you could just tell by our gameplay, like it was like, you know, we have solid gameplay, and we actually choked a lot, to be honest. Like, but you know, that'll all go away. You know, we just need more experience and more time, and like Crusty will develop us into like something just like we're gonna be like an absolute unit, you know, because we have the talent, you know, we have a lot of talent on this team, and that's what Crusty said coming into this team when he got the offer. He was like, he saw like a gold mine, is how he explained it. He was like, there's a gold mine here, you know, I just got to teach these players how to play the game and like have them play as a team, and then they'll be like insane. So yeah.
Well, I think too, like there has been some experimentation with the team going on. Obviously, we talked about stage 3 where you weren't playing a lot and Architect was new and trying to integrate into this lineup. But
yeah,
obviously anybody who has listened to interviews with you or watched your stream or anything knows that you're a very vocal player. And I know that you were doing a lot of the shot calling in the early stages of Overwatch League for the Shock. And, according to interviews we got when you came back into the lineup, that one of the reasons why you were brought back in is because obviously you have better communication skills than Architect, who does his English is still very rudimentary. So with you, is that one of the reasons why you came back in on some of these maps? Do you feel like that's a strength that you bring to the team? Because your individual play was also excellent. I mean, it took several weeks for you to even lose a map. You were winning all your maps that you were playing, if I recall correctly. Your McCree and Widowmaker both looked super mechanically good. So is that one of the main reasons you got brought back in? Like, what was the reasoning behind you coming in?
That actually is the main reason. Crusty, you saw that we didn't really have a shot caller or like anybody to take charge in like certain situations, apart from like Sinatra when he's on like Zarya, you know what I mean? But he noticed that and he was like, he believes that you need to have like a leader in game. And nobody else was really stepping up and doing that, and I was kind of like the father of the team. Like I was able to come in and like just fill that role, even though if I'm not making like the best calls, at least I'm making like some call, So we're all on the same page and we're all doing something together. And he also he knows I'm like very clutch in the moment too. So that's the main reason why I was brought in. And I think like he knows that if he just like works with me more and like teaches me more of the game, like I can become like a very good shot caller and like know the best things to do in like in the certain situations, So it'll take time to like get like the calling like perfect, but he'll help me,
What is the Architect impact been of him coming to your team? Because even before he joined, I mean, Monty dubbed it as like the Architect lottery because there's so many teams that could have used him. In fact, funnily enough, some of the teams in the playoffs now probably wish they had him on their team. What's the difference been like since he joined the squad? And like, were there actually any apprehensions with the fact knowing he's Korean and at the time your team was obviously like a Western squad?
I think we were all like just really hyped to have him. Even I was like, even though he like ended up taking my spot, like it was cool. Like I was fine. I was fine sitting back, like, and watching him play the game and trying to learn off of like his gameplay because he's like one of the most elusive players I've seen and like one of the most self-sufficient players I've seen like in the game. It's like actually crazy. Like this guy plays Genji and doesn't need a pocket and just gets out alive every single time. It's like the craziest thing I've ever seen. Like I don't understand like how he does it because when I'm playing Genji, I go in and land on a Junkrat trap and I'm dead. So it's like watching this guy play, he's just like a freak at the game, like mechanically. And his Widow is like nobody thought he would be good at Widow, like nobody knew when we picked him up that he was going to be like a good Widow, but he's so good at his timings of flankings and just small things like that like he doesn't need the best aim, like everything else, like his ability to like outplay opponents and stuff like that, it takes over. And like because he doesn't have the best aim, but like he's just so good at the other things. But we were definitely excited to have him, and the reason why I didn't play at all in stage 3 is because we just really wanted to like integrate him within the team.
Right. Since when the league started, we heard this story that you guys were one of the main practice partners of the Excelsior because like you were the ones who didn't play them for a stage, etc. Right. Did that continue throughout the Overwatch League, like right up to now? Do you still practice with NYXL?
We still scrim against them, but we used to scrim against them like every day back in stage 1. It's not like that anymore, like because we actually play them in the stage now. So I think like I don't know if they changed their system, but like I think they scrim the team that they don't play a lot going into this stage. So like we played them a lot, and I don't know why we didn't just copy what they ran because we should have. Like we had basically the same players. Like not like the same players, but like the same play style. Like I don't know why we didn't just run like Widow Junkrat the entire first stage, like Houston and NYXL, especially since we played against them so much. We like tried to force dive when like I don't even play Genji. You know what I mean? It was like kind of like I don't know what we were doing, dude. Like now that I look back,
you also just didn't have the right players to play dive because you were fundamentally
exactly.
We're a very defensive team, which is why you should have played like defensive teams like Houston or New York. Now, but what's so interesting about the Shock in general, though, is that you change with Super coming in, with Choi Hyobin coming in, with Moth coming in, you change, and Sinatra, you change from being a really defensive team in stage 1 to a very aggressive team by stage 4. Was that Crusty, or was that just the players themselves? Like Super definitely has a way more aggressive style.
Yeah, Super is way more aggressive, and also like, you know, like Crusty taught us how to dive. Like Crusty and Junkbuck. Gotta give credit to Junkbuck for their stage 3, because that's when like Widow Tracer was more prominent. Like we definitely like got like a synergy between Super and Sinatra that like it was very visibly seen. Like I remember like just like watching like games in the dugout, and then like all of a sudden I see Super and Sinatra land, like, and they're like, oh, 3, 2, 1, Zenyatta go, and then like they land at the same time, and I'm like, damn, you know, like this is starting to like, they're starting to get like the synergy down finally, and like this is what a dive looks like. So definitely Super is definitely more of an aggressive player, and obviously Sinatra's an aggressive player as well. So I guess that just like helped out a bit.
As someone who knows the NYXL perhaps better than some of the other opponents of them do then, what did you think of what was going on in stage 4 and people speculating, theorizing, like, you know, they're either sort of like resting, or they're maybe even fucking around at times, or they don't care because they've locked up a playoff spot? Do you buy that that's what was happening?
So I think about this, and it's a conspiracy theory, but like they could have, you know, like they could have finessed like the rankings, like I'm not saying that they're throwing, but like they could have finessed the rankings to like play, like to like eliminate some teams and get certain teams in, right? They could have done that. I don't know if they're that big.
People don't realize,
but you know what I mean. Like
yes,
they
there's a big difference between actively telling your players lose this match and putting a different lineup in that loses the game. I mean, Kai can tell us all about that.
But so they definitely could have done something like that. Like when $1 million is on the line, like maybe I would have done something like that. Yeah, I don't know.
But the thing about that is they have the right to do that. People can get mad all they want, but New York fucking dominated the league, locked in their #1 seed. And if you don't want that to happen, then fucking beat them. It's literally anybody beat them more at any point in time. So
exactly. So I mean, like that's what I said. Like I would definitely, you know, look to doing something like that. But you know, I noticed that they were trying different strats as well. Like on Hanamura, they played like Pharah Mercy, like on attack and stuff like that. Like who plays Pharah Mercy on Hanamura attack against like Widow? You know, it's just like come on, bro. But you know what I mean. So they were trying different strats. They were like really seeing like what they could get away with against certain teams. And you know, I don't think it'll like they're gonna be insane no matter what. You know, like they could. Yeah,
it really looked like to me at some points where it was almost like they were practicing in a real match, knowing that their opponents were going to play for real. And like you're saying, with some of the strats they were running, it was almost like, let's see if we can change our positioning with the same composition or change our tactics with the same composition in order to win. It almost felt like they were practicing for a scenario where they've got like 30 seconds left and they have to make a comp work against this comp. So let's just try it for 4 minutes and figure out how it works in a way where we know the other team is performing to their highest degree, because you can't get that experience in scrims, right? Guaranteed. Exactly. So if you know someone is desperate to beat you and they're going to be playing at their best, that's when you can really test them or fuck with them with this kind of stuff. And then you get data for later on about what they're going to do.
That's exactly what I feel like they did.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
Plus, as you said, Monty, like if people don't like it, then you should have beaten them. It's like that classic like response that the all-time great wide receiver Terrell Owens had, where when people would complain about him celebrating and his antics, he would just say, "Well, it's easy, just keep me out the end zone." can't celebrate if I don't score a touchdown. Yeah, so that's the problem. They couldn't. Right? Okay. In light of that, then, with all that taken into account, Babybay, is NYXL going to complete their destiny and win the Overwatch League playoffs?
I feel like they will, dude. I mean, like, come on, man, how do you beat them, dude? Come on. Like right now, like there's just no answer right now. And like, especially with this, like even this meta, like this meta's not going to be against them either. Like it's like a Hanzo Widow meta, you know, like I just don't see how you can beat them. Like this meta is literally like from my scrims of like Team USA so far, it's just literally been Widow, Hanzo, Pharah. You know, like you swap the Hanzo to Pharah, maybe sometimes Brigitte. But you know, like I just don't see who can beat them unless like unless like out of nowhere, like maybe Valiant can beat them, but
okay.
I mean, I still just don't see how like NYXL is just so solid, and like I just can't even imagine seeing like J-Jonic's not going to choke, dude. You know, like and the thing about like playoffs in general is like when players are popping off, like it's a lot of more pressure to the other team. You know, like that's what I've learned from my experience in esports. Like when someone's popping off, they can totally take over the game, and J-Jonic always pops off.
And the other thing that's scary too is that if it is a Hanzo Widowmaker Pharah meta, well, they literally just spent all of stage 4 training Sabilby to be a great Widowmaker player. By the way, statistically, Sabilby was the better Widowmaker than Pine in stage 4.
Yeah, I knew that. I've been saying when people ask me to stream, they're like, "Oh, who do you think's the best Widow?" I'm like SBB, and they're like, "Oh no, not Pine." I'm like, dude, have you seen this guy's aim lately? Like, just watch his stream on Widow. It's crazy. Or watch, like, the clips that he gets in OWL. It's nuts.
So they just have LiNkzr chilling there like, can I play? No.
No. Like, and that's the thing is, like, Libero, they used in stage 3 as Widowmaker, right? So they play so they basically have 3 top-tier Widowmakers, okay, for this meta. Sabilby is maybe the best tracer in the league with Striker, and he's a very good brigade. And if we're talking about a Hanzo Pharah meta, well, guess who's great at Hanzo and Pharah? It's Libero.
Exactly.
So where do you go with this? Like their flexibility with just Libero and SBB is huge. And then they also have Pine there, where Pine may not have the same stats in stage 4 as SBB did. But the thing about Pine is he completely changes NYXL's playstyle. And if you don't know when Pine is going to be coming in, it's very hard to craft strategies on certain maps because he plays so weird that you never know where he's gonna fucking come from. He plays like a
exactly. He's so elusive and just kills like 3 of your teammates. Yeah, he's crazy.
So I really think it's gonna be tough. I really think it's gonna be tough. And also, like, I'm not sure we've seen the level of Hanzo play out of agilities that they're going to need in order to take out NYXL in this patch.
Yeah, exactly. I think like the only like really like good, like super good Hanzo that I've seen on the new patch so far has been Birdring. Like actually, like maybe.
Oh, has he been good?
Man, it's like he had like something like this, like the craziest stats I've seen. Like 9 hours on Hanzo, 18% crit, and I was like, what? Like the average right now, like critical hit is like 13, like 14. This guy had 18, dude, at like one point. And like I know that Prophet's been playing a lot of Widowmaker, so what I think is gonna happen is Prophet Widow, Birdring, Hanzo, and maybe if like Birdring is just like that, like good, which he is, you know, and like yeah, for some reason they always clutch in playoff situations. Maybe they can do something, you know. Maybe they'll be the team that does it, but I just don't see it. I don't know.
So there's an obvious hole in what you just said though, Babybay, which is okay. Yes, you sung the praises of NYXL. You said maybe Spitfire can get it together. All the LA fans right now are like, why are you hitting on Valiant? Why not? We just won a stage. We're like undefeated. Why can't Valiant just win it all, Babybay? It's your turn to explain. Like everyone else, it feels like all the talent and the casters have to have an intervention with their fans to explain. Like, listen, it's not hating to just say you won't win the league. What do you think,
Valiant? You think there's a chance?
I mean there is, but I just don't. I just think like they're outclassed in the DPS. You know what I mean? And like, as much as I want to say like, you know, I mean, Fate and Space are like crazy. They are crazy. They're like probably like the second best, but like I just don't think you can beat like that. I don't think you can beat NYXL when they're trying their 100% hardest. Like I mean, that's been proven already. You know, like I don't think anything's changed.
You know, in some other games,
I don't even know how you go about beating them because like you said earlier, like agilities isn't like he's not like at the level of Libero. Yes. Like Libero is literally a better player than him. Like when you compare the players, right? Maybe you can compare Fate and who's it?
Gesture.
No, it's not Gesture. Right. It's Mono, right?
Yes.
I mean, okay, sure. Like okay, they're pretty close, right? And then you compare Space and Meko, they're pretty close. But then you compare like. And like Soon's been playing very good lately. Don't get me wrong. I'm actually like very impressed with how Soon's been playing. But like you compare Soon to Sabiobi, and like it just seems like Sabiobi's like, you know, the Korean Soon. And then you compare agilities to Libero, and then you're like, oh wait, like Libero is just like Korean, you know, so it's like he's just better, like he's just a step up, you know. It's like he's the Korean version.
He's reached the epiphany, Monty.
Yeah, how do you beat?
No, he reached the epiphany a long time ago. He was actually like a big like League of Legends fan who loved watching Korean. He's been a long time Korean esports fan from our conversations.
He wasn't like Jake, who came in like, I think we'll all be fairly close, you know. Koreans aren't that sick, are they? Yeah.
No, Babybay was he knows from League of Legends. He knows the
I know.
Seeing the light.
I knew from the start.
What about this then, Babybay? So in some other games, like League of Legends, for example, when there is like a Korean team who's not just like very good for Koreans, they're like the best team in the game, you sometimes get stories. So I'm thinking like some of the SK Telecom lineups, the Samsung lineups of the past. There's some stories where like in scrims even these teams could, if they were like going super ham, could just win like 20 games in a row. And even some of like the best Western teams would be like, it was ridiculous, you know, you just couldn't beat these guys. What is NYXL like at when they're at like a full 10 out of 10 level?
It's just they don't make any mistakes. So if you make one mistake, they would like take advantage of it and you just lose just off of that. Like something so small, like your Zenyatta was like literally like 5 meters in front of somebody, and like they just take advantage of it. It's like, what? Like it's something so small, like it could just be your positioning. It could be like, oh, I misused my ult, I popped Valk too early, and then like they come in and pop their Valk or something, you know what I mean? Like they baited out your Valk, they baited out your trance. It's just like the smallest things when they're on 100%, that it's just they just take it away, and they can just do anything they want with it. Like if you let's say you mess up on like a first point of a defense, and like they just get ults, like they can take advantage of that and snowball almost the entire map. You know, they just know how to do these things. Like they know, like when they see like a winning situation, like they take it and they run with it. You know what I mean? And that's what makes them like so good, is that they see like it just feels like they've been in like every scenario. Like it's just crazy. Like I just don't know. It's just annoying to play against, honestly.
I've talked to some of your teammates on the Shock, and you know, you've had some pretty close games with the NYXL actually, especially in the last couple of stages. But what your teammates have told me is that it's not hard playing against New York for the first couple of games. The problem is that they can maintain their level of play and their concentration across the entire series in a way that other teams your teammates felt like they couldn't do it. Like they could keep up with them for a while, but like the longer the match went on, the more they felt themselves like fading and making more mistakes, and NYXL just stayed exactly the same the entire time. It's hard to keep the composure like they do. Like it just doesn't make sense to me. They're like robots.
So since you referenced teased the idea that Birdring might come out and his Hanzo could maybe change things, do you think that the Gladiators Spitfire series, can Gladiators actually win that? I Spitfire rather. Sorry, I got the wrong way around there.
Yeah, I think Spitfire can definitely win it. Like if we've learned anything about this team, is that they're a playoff team. Like in my opinion, like in one of the stages they like totally like reverse swept NYXL, right? It was NYXL that they
stage one.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. Like, you know, I think this team clutches it out. It was a completely different meta, but I think I've played against Prophet's Widow lately, and if it is the way I think it's gonna be, like I think they could definitely give Gladiators a run for their money. Because Prophet is one of those players too that's just like when he's on, like he's on. You know, it doesn't matter what he's playing. So I think that they could win, and I know like talking to some of like I don't want to leak anything, but I know like Gladiators will be running like a different Hanzo player. I'm just gonna say that. I think they will because they've been scrimming with him a lot more. So I think that they could win, but Gladiators has been very solid lately. I don't know. It's hard. It's
Should
hard
Gladiators
to say. Like,
be the favorite just in terms of like overall?
I think so. I think you look at this and you're like, oh, like Gladiators, like of course they've been performing way better lately. But like London right now, like when I'm looking at this, is like the wild card right here. Like they're just like they're either gonna get stomped or they're gonna like make it. You know, that's how I'm looking at this.
As a DPS player, evaluating other DPS players, do you think Prophet and Birdring are the best DPS duo in Overwatch League?
No, I don't think so. I don't know. It did my hold on.
Libero and SPV?
The best duo. Sorry. Yeah, I think Libero and SPV are the best duo. I think that's been proven. I don't even know who'd be the runner-up, to be honest. That's actually like really close for everything else.
How do you evaluate the Gladiators DPS?
They have Surefour and Hydration, right? That's like the main players, and then they have Silkthread and Asher.
Yeah.
I don't see Asher getting any playtime, but I mean, like honestly, like Surefour's Widow has been like extremely impressive lately, but I don't think it's enough to. I don't think it's like better than Birdring or SBB's Widow or Carpe's Widow. I don't think he's like that insane at Widow. But I think the thing that Gladiators has over like everybody else is that like they're just playing like really well as a team lately. Their teamwork has been really good, but you know, like that starts to crumble. Like teamwork can start to crumble when players like Birdring and Prophet are popping off. You know what I mean? Like if they're able to get picks and like kind of like just like work at you, like you're gonna start making more mistakes, and it's a playoff situation. It's like a lot of high pressure. I don't know. I mean, like I'm sure London's going into this, or I mean, Gladiators is going into this being like, oh, like we got London, thank God. You know, these guys are trash. So I don't know. I think London could upset in this series.
Okay. In the other matchup, we have Boston and Philadelphia. What do you think?
Yeah, I think Philly's gonna win. I mean, Carpe is gonna just destroy Boston. Boston doesn't have like I mean, Striker's playing Widow now, but I still think Carpe's just like Striker's just not at that level yet. You know, Striker has been getting way better at Widow, but like it's only a stage. It's yeah, exactly. You know, like Carpe's been like arguably the most consistent Widow for 4 stages straight. You know, like how do you? I don't think and like mistakes can't Widow. Like I'm sorry, he just can't. Philly's gonna. This is like the one that I think is just like totally not even close. Like Philly's just gonna win. I don't think Boston can do anything about it.
Okay. In a world in which Philadelphia does win, they would end up playing NYXL because they're the lowest seed. So do they have any kind of ability to match up with NYXL?
I mean, I don't think NYXL is the type of team to let like a Widowmaker, just like a solo Widowmaker, or like, I mean, EQO is very good too, don't get me wrong. Like he's really good at Hanzo Farah, but I don't think NYXL is the type of team to let one person or 2 people beat their team. Like you need to beat their team as like 6 people. And I just I haven't seen that out of Philly like yet. Like just 6 people like winning a game. Like it's always been like Carpe EQO like carrying a game, or I mean, no, Boombox hasn't stepping up lately, but
it's actually crazy. Without EQO, Philly has like a 40% win rate.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
so EQO, like we can talk about Carpe. EQO is actually
EQO's insane too.
But it is very interesting to think that just, you know, EQO less Philly is like a 40% team, and Philly with EQO is like a 60 or 70% team. So pretty big difference.
Yeah, but I don't think you can beat NYXL with 2 players, you know, or like even like I've noticed like Boombox has been playing very well. I don't think like if you need all 6 players to be popping off, and I don't think we've really seen like who the tanks like Sato and Hapa, I think now, right? They're not playing Fraggy anymore, right? Yeah, so I don't think we've like really seen like insane play out of them yet.
Who do you think will be the MVP of the playoff run?
Is that like the voting thing?
That's just something I've invented now. Like it doesn't actually exist.
Like who's going to pop off the hardest in the playoffs?
In playoffs.
Well, considering I think NYXL is going to win, and like all the hype that's been around Jay Jonak, it's probably going to be him, because I'm sure this guy's going to like dominate the playoffs and everything. So it's got to be Jay Jonak. But if it was a player that's not going to win, I'd probably put it on like Carpe.
Okay.
Probably. I feel like Carpe will pop off even if his team's going to lose.
Let me modify that a second. Okay, so since in theory Valiant is one of the teams that has a shot to win, who would have to be the MVP from Valiant if they were going to win the Overwatch League? I think I would give like there's like 2 players or even 3 players I would give it to. Like for one, I would give it to Custa, just because like guy came from Dallas Fuel, didn't even get any play time, and then joined that team, and I'm sure he has like a big role in calling. And then like I guess like runners up would be Space and Fate. Like Fate has like been. I feel like people sleep on how good Fate is. I feel like I never hear any praise about how good Fate is. I don't know. Do you feel the same? Shadow of Space.
Okay. Do you feel the same? Like
we've been trying. The casters I know have been trying to highlight Fate and Space more recently because we feel like they are one of the top 3 tank duos in the league.
For sure.
So, yeah, we've been definitely trying recently, but I do think we were not as good about that previously, but we've been trying more recently.
Yeah.
For me, I think like and to answer the same question, like for me on the Valiant, it would have to be soon because I think like for me, you're getting a great tank duo out of Fate and Space, and they're going to put in great performances, and Custa's a great shot caller and has been a solid addition to the team that has helped them turn their fortune around. But you said it earlier, the DPS player soon has been getting a lot better and has had some strong performances recently. But if Valiant's going to win, then it would require a super, like, amazingly good performance from Soon. And so Soon, if Soon was the MVP, that might actually push them up to the next level that they could win the Owl season.
So you're all wrong, because the actual correct answer is that in comes all of a sudden KSF and he takes off the training weights and he just goes fucking ham. And then he says, like, there you go, SBB, go back to your wife. Like, this is a man's game, and just fucking dominates the league. It turns out he was the Phantom Menace all along. He was just behind the whole thing.
Verbo, dude. Verbo. They bring in Verbo, dude. Verbo dominates. His shot calling was all they needed.
Okay. Right, okay. Do you have any final words before we move along from this segment?
No, just thank you guys for watching me. Look out for SF Shock and season 2 of the Overwatch League. We're gonna pop off. We're actually gonna take advantage. We're actually gonna take advantage of the time that we have going into the next season.
Yeah, everyone has to realize, season 1 was never going to be anything for the Shock. They knew that going in, So season 1 was like an extended preview for what's going to happen in season 2. Season 2 is the real show,
Yeah, it is. It's going to be good. It's going to be good. Season 2 is going to be lit, actually.
Yeah, and you guys too, a lot of fans aren't going to be aware of this yet, but out of the teams that I've talked to, the Shock are actually coming back probably the soonest. And we were talking about this before we started recording too. You guys are going to be out for a very small amount of time on your own, and then you're coming back to practice immediately. And it seems like many other teams will be taking longer breaks than you, but it seems like you guys are really dedicated to that improvement. Yeah,
we need to win. I mean, listen, we get paid for this, like what's the point of taking a long break? Like this is literally our job. What are we going to do? Just sit around, do nothing all day? Like we'll find practice somewhere. So
that's great.
We'll do it.
Plenty of contenders teams to practice against.
Exactly. And then maybe maybe go into Korea or something. Who knows? I don't know.
That'd be cool. Go for a boot camp.
Yeah, who knows, man? The possibilities are endless. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Thanks.
Peace.
Yeah,
you've got to keep these people lined up, like sort of in your peripheral, because there's not that many, to be honest. Right, here we are, a 38-year-old man with 2 children, a mortgage. But you know what? He looks pretty fucking good for his age.
A taco costume.
Okay. Are you there, mate?
What's up, man? Can you hear me? Is the mic working?
I have one question for you.
Sweet. I'm at my sister's place. I'm sorry. I was.
But here's what I don't understand.
Dude, do you see this background? This is totally amazing.
Dude, listen, I appreciate it, but what I don't understand is why have you got a dog wearing the Florida Mayhem colors? You brought Zebasai on the show? You got the Florida Mayhem's dog?
No, this dog's alive. This dog is living.
Okay, right. I think we should just keep all this in. Do you want this to be live? Is that okay?
You see also how it hasn't used Valkyrie before the show starts. That dog is definitely going to Valk on time when the show starts.
This dog's name is Higgins, and I named him after Magnum PI's butler, and I love him. Okay. It's Higgins.
Are you okay with your dog being on camera? Are we okay? Shall we just be live?
Oh, it's fine. Yeah, I don't care.
Right,
no, look at this back. Now I'm set. Let's go.
Yeah, let's do it. Why not? That is some disturbing shit, like whatever's behind you.
I've decided I don't care about this, so we're gonna do it.
Okay, well, that's certainly one way to approach it.
I mean, I care about it, but I don't really care about it.
Yes, exactly. Well, it's like when American players in esports games say, "I want to win." It's like, well, you do in a way, but do you really? Are you really putting the hours, dedication? Probably not. You just sort of want to win, don't you?
My niece spent time making this costume, so he's gonna wear it, and we're gonna sit on camera.
Fair enough.
I don't know what it looks like. I don't have our feedback. I'm on a Chromebook. This is terrible. So let's go.
Hexagrams. Since obviously there's only so many matchups to talk about in the playoffs, and a lot of the other people we've had on have tried to break them down, differing levels of insight. Manneten, a guy of few words, he makes them count. it literally jumped on the keyboard there, but nothing happened. It didn't like open up another tab or anything. So, right, here's the question for you, okay? Give me a real reason as to why Boston Uprising could actually win this match. Do you think they can do it? Because it's a bit depressing, you know, if a team comes in with the 3rd seed and then they don't have any shot to do anything.
What, against Philly? Why Boston could beat Philly?
Yeah.
If they shut down Carpe, they beat Philly. It's pretty easy.
That's why all the teams have been able to shut down Carpe, right? Because of how easy it was.
No, I mean, like, I think Striker has his like giant performances and whatnot. I'm actually really terrified of like whatever team comes out of this matchup. Like, if it's like a 3-2, either way, I don't care. Whatever team comes out of it. If
remember, by the way, that it's best of 3 of best of 5s.
Yeah, well, yeah, whatever. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But if one team comes out like and stomps the other team, then that team is scary as hell. Like if Boston comes through and just rolls, or Philly comes through and just rolls, that's a scary team because they're peaking. And I think both teams have that peak that should scare people. Probably they don't beat Philly. I think Philly doesn't really care right now. They feel like no pressure. I talked to all the teams yesterday, and they said, hey, that they don't really care, that they're feeling no pressure. I don't know. I think there's a small chance in the world, based on how Striker's been playing and how he's been figuring out how to play Widow, that he shuts down Carpe. Look, we're going into a new patch, right? So it's like, which Hanzo is better? I think EQO's Hanzo is probably going to be better than Mistakes' Hanzo, and I'm a huge Mistakes fan. So yeah, I think Philly probably wins that one, but maybe Striker takes like weird angles and shuts down Carpe. Once Carpe starts to get shut down, he kind of shuts down himself.
Well, that's also another factor, obviously, that's interesting, is because it's a new patch and teams need to practice to be on the patch. If you think about the way the playoff works, because it's not a permanently set bracket, it would be a big risk to actually play any of the semi-final teams. So you would have to assume people are just playing whoever's on the other side of the quarterfinal bracket, because you know you can't play that team until you reach the final anyway. So if you're Philadelphia, presumably you're scrimming Gladiators, Spitfire, maybe some of the other teams if they've stuck around.
No, they are. Yeah.
I mean, if you're Philadelphia, you're definitely scrimming Valiant and Spitfire and Gladiators, because there's absolutely no way you can play any of those teams in the semis.
It's 100% the truth. I asked them that yesterday. No, those are facts.
Because by that logic, actually, Philadelphia has a pretty nice scrim setup in that site. If you can play Gladiators and Valiant, that's not a bad.
Well, because they're the lowest seed, they automatically know if they win, they play New York. That's not true of anyone else.
Yeah.
Right. So that means that they have more opportunities to scrim a more diverse set of opponents.
Yes. The only team that sorry, there's dogs and family. The only team that Valiant is not scrimming is Philly, because they can't play Philly, obviously, and that makes sense. I don't know. I've always said that Philly, even at their peak, they can beat anybody. I really believe that if Philly rolls through Boston, then they're scary. Then they roll through another team. I think Philly could beat New York in a hypothetical universe, but that's a huge hypothetical universe. Again, it's so nuts that we're going into this final thing and we have a new patch, so it's very difficult to tell. That's what every team says. Like, I don't know, Hanzo. I don't know, Hanzo. I don't know, Hanzo. That's what everyone said. So I don't know, Hanzo.
Do you have to run Hanzo? Will there not just be a team that if they're not as good and the other team has an amazing one, they're just like, we'll get different options?
What do you think Hanzo's bad against right now?
Exactly. And we've actually talked a lot about Hanzo today, but we haven't, for a lot of people, I think, broken down why the new Hanzo is so strong.
I mean, the joke would obviously be it's bad against your own team if you're shit at Hanzo.
That's definitely true. I think, like, for the most part, the change to Hanzo. So you look at Scatter Arrow as an ability, and it was a lot of RNG as to whether or not it was going to work properly. Sometimes it would just completely miss kills. Sometimes it would get you kills that you shouldn't. But one of the main problems with Hanzo and Double Sniper in general is that Hanzo and Widowmaker have a very low DPS against barriers. So Orisa barrier or Reinhardt barrier, Winston bubbles. Their DPS isn't very high unless you shoot Scatter Arrow into the barrier. But you will never do that because you need scatter arrow to deal with any flankers, anybody who's going to jump on you. So you're never really going to shoot the scatter arrow in there. Now, the difference is when you have storm arrow, now you can break barriers really fast, which means that, and if a tank jumps you, you can just blow up the tank as well. So
or you can just leap away.
Or you can just leap away now. Yeah, the movement abilities definitely help. So it's one of those things where new Hanzo changes a lot about how Hanzo plays at a distance and close up, right? In basically every factor of his gameplay, he's more mobile. He has more options in terms of how he uses the storm arrows, whether he's going to use it to bust a barrier or whether he's going to use it to protect himself. And he doesn't really have to make a decision about that because he's got multiple storm arrows. So yeah, it's a very, very powerful ability, and it will be potent to see on the new Hanzo. So that's why Hanzo is so important right now, is because he just doesn't have the same weaknesses that he did previously.
I asked some teams. I was like, well, what about running Pharah? Because you used to run Pharah on offense on King's Row, on several of the maps that are going to be in the pool, like Oasis, or like, but it's like hit scan. It's just like Storm was like hit scan. You can't. It used to be like a very good matchup for Pharah. You run it against Hanzo, dunzo, doesn't matter. Now it's not, and teams are not confident to run like even a Pharah against Hanzo. You can't run Pharah against Hanzo? What's Hanzo weak against? Like, you're just going to see him, like, I think, a good 80% plus pick rate. I feel confident in that. Like, I would go to Vegas and say that.
Yeah, and like you're saying, because what was Hanzo bad at? Pharah, or he had a hard time dealing with things like Orisa barriers and being, trying to get shots on entrenched points. Well, now he can destroy the barriers much faster, which means he's going to get free shots behind the barrier once that barrier is down. So it's very different now.
Okay, right. What about the other matchup, the Spitfire versus Gladiators?
I always want my gut to take Spitfire, because I just look at these guys and I'm like, oh, this roster is so good. It's so strong. It's so, if they play well, they can crush anybody. This one's kind of a pick 'em for me. It's kind of a coin flip, but I just have to give it to the Gladiators. I think their versatility and they have better shot calling and better adaptability than the London Spitfire have shown me in the last 2 months. Easily. They see something and they change. And even maybe we go into the new meta and like there's not a whole lot of changes to be had, they will make it quicker than the Spitfire do. So I want the Spitfire to be successful. I think the only possibility that the Spitfire come out and win this game is that Birdring just shows up and decides to shut down Shore4. Shore4 has been noted about, like, he's been a good Widow, but people know his style. They know how he plays. And if Birdring decides to show up that day and shuts down Shore4 on the Widow v Widow, which is going to happen, again, we talk so much about Hanzo. Again, it's going to be Widow v Widow still, and all these maps, always, constantly. If Birdring shuts down Shore4, then they have a shot. But I think overall, the squad of the Gladiators is more of a team than the London Spitfire collective of players that they have right now.
Yeah, I agree with you, and we've been talking about this a lot on the show. But it's like, how, if London can't be a team after 4 stages, is it reasonable to expect them to suddenly become a team in the next couple of weeks before playoffs? Probably not.
Do you think that the Gladiators can beat either Valiant, or if they were to make it to the final, Excelsior as well? Are they a team that can go the whole way?
No. I think if Valiant are there, maybe, because it's just like they do have these moments against Valiant. I still have a hard time picking anyone over New York. I just find the New York talent, and then like we haven't even talking about like if it's going to be a Hanzo meta, they do have a guy named Libero who happens to be very good at the bow and arrow. No, I just don't see it. I don't see there's in a world where we walk away and the Los Angeles Gladiators are going to be the Overwatch League Stage 1 champions, and I hope to be clipped in a YouTube video later about that.
It's a badge of pride.
I like those guys a lot. I think they've got a lot of synergy, and I think that they're good players all the way through. I think the Valiant right now are peaking so hard that it's really hard to pick even the Gladiators against the Valiant. And then you look past the Valiant and you say New York. Gladiators, you can make an argument that they're the third, fourth best team in the league right now. But I think the margin between them and the Valiant and the New York Excelsior is significant.
Okay. Who do you think is actually, since I know you have limited time here, who do you think is going to win the Overwatch League?
I'm going to go the Valiant. I'm going to go Dark Horse Valiant. And this is a team, and Monty's seen me just look at this and be like, what? I just don't like them. I don't get it.
None of us like him, Hex. That's the problem. We don't.
Yeah, I know. That's the weird thing. And I've come around to it. For my look, I love Mano and Meko, and like to me, the Overwatch is all about tank lines. Mano and Meko are amazing; they're great tanks. Right now, I would love to have Fate and Space as my tank lines, and I think Space, if he were 6 months older, he would be in the talks of the MVP for the Overwatch League right now. If he was playing since day one, Space is that good of a diva. He makes Fate's job that much easier, and in turn, it makes all their DPS's job that much easier. That's why you're seeing Agilities, and it's why you're seeing Soon do that much better. I think the Newark XL is obviously like, it's an easy choice. I'm gonna go Valiant. I think the Valiant are the best team in the league right now based on their tank line. Their tank line is that good. Their DPS are playing at a level that they have earned, honestly. I talked to Soon. He's been just working, just grinding on this Widow. Agilities has always been this player if you give him space. We saw this when Kariv and Fate first came to the team. Agilities finally started being this guy back when they were Immortals. And then, the backline just happens to be Kariv and Custa. That's it. What a terrible roster that must be. So I'm gonna give it to Valiant. I think the Valiant have it. I think New York is. I don't know. There is a problem with maybe taking a couple of games off. Maybe how do you reform? Like how do you regroup that momentum? How do you regroup that dominance? So New York could be a better pick, but I'm going to go with the Valiant.
Go for the bold pick, huh?
Why not? I live in LA, right? So
So you have to make the home fans happy, I guess.
I guess I'm going to be in New York soon, though. Shit.
Technically not in New York anyway, so.
No, I know. I think like everyone's going to say New York. I think the Valiant have a legitimate chance, and I looked at this team 3 weeks ago, and I didn't like them. I just didn't like them. Just didn't like looking at them. Didn't like watching them play. Didn't really see anything good about them. And then I finally saw some pieces come together, and I think if they roll through, if they peak at the right time, I think they are the team that can really unseat the XL.
And if they do that, then who will be their MVP?
If they beat the XL, their MVP will be Soon. You have to have Soon crush SBB and Pine to even have a chance against NYXL.
It's actually funny because we were just talking about that with Babybay, who was the previous guest, and I said if Valiant win, I agree the MVP has to be Soon. Like he has to. Yeah. That's the player I think that has been stepping up and needs to step up even more.
Yeah. I talked to him the other day, and I was like, "Well, obviously you've stepped up in the last month or so. Do you think you have?" And he's like, "Well, yes. I've been working. I've been practicing. I'm getting better every day. Are you watching the games? Yes, Soon. We are. You are getting better every day." And for a moment, I thought it was smoke and mirrors. There were times I'm like, he didn't mean to hit that shot. He accidentally killed that person. But now I think he's really just understanding. Every Widow I talk to is not even about like, well, my aim has to be over. It's like, no, I need to take this position, that position. He's been in the film room. He's been watching all these angles. He's been watching what other Widows are, where they are, why they are. And like, that's why the Valiant is like definitely a heads up against the Gladiators, because he knows where Shore is every time. He knows where he is. So yeah, no, I really believe that Soon has just been crushing study, and I like it. So that's my pick.
Okay. Any parting words?
My dog's gone. No. by Higgins. Higgins is over there. Thanks for having me. Sorry for making a mockery of your show with my butterfly, my shirt.
Absolutely okay, mate.
It's okay.
You fulfilled your role of being the only person who would pick the Valiant to win, so the check's in the mail. Thanks a lot. Making it an interesting show. Cheers, man.
Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Right, we're back for the final segment of the show. And you know what? All those people we had on before, I mean, Hexagrams is excluded, Volamel's excluded. You know, Hexagrams obviously a caster, Volamel's a journalist. And while I appreciate all those players coming on, you know, yeah, it's fun to know what they think about other teams and speculate. But as I have mentioned, they are all losers. None of them are actually in the playoffs. It doesn't really matter what any of them think. Whereas NeptuNo here actually has the rare status of being someone who still could win the Overwatch League. He is in the Overwatch League playoffs, admittedly with the lowest seed, but he's playing against Boston Uprising. If they win that match, he'll be playing against New York Excelsior. And so here's the first question for you, NeptuNo. What has the season been like for Philadelphia Fusion? I mean, obviously you added some players as the season went on due to some suspensions. What's Overwatch League Season 1 been like?
Has been like a bit crazy with, I don't know, like really up and downs on the team. A lot of stuff going on. So in sometimes has been like really stressful for me. And sometimes has been like really enjoyable. But, you know, like a bit of everything, I guess.
So obviously one of the things over the season was it started out with Mercy. Then for a while you could have some Lucio. Now it's mainly Mercy still, but I've even seen you sometimes play Ana rarely. What's the fit like for you at the moment?
What?
What are the supports like for you at the moment?
What do you mean? Like,
did you hear any of the stuff I just said? Like, it started out you were playing Mercy in the Overwatch League, yes. Remember that one? It's like a blonde woman who can bring people back to life for no reason. That's a terrible game mechanic. Then, this old character that's sort of a guy with dreads and he like loves music and stuff. And again, I don't know how this mechanism will work, but music can make things go faster. Like, don't know what era these guys are from. Like,
yeah, I guess what it is.
I've had a few nights like that, but it wasn't really the music that was making me go faster. So anyway, then you switched between these two radically different characters. There was even a mysterious woman who shoots darts, who's a support, but she has a gun and she can make people go to sleep again. Don't know what that mechanism would be. Some sort of like sleep agent or something. Now, moving between all of these, where is your game at? Like, did it fit you, the original Mercy meta? Did you mind when we got to play a bit of Lucio? Where is support at the moment for NeptuNo?
I felt like at the beginning I was like really bad on Mercy when I started Overwatch League, so it was like really hard to get used to play a hero I'd never played before. Then with Lucio, I think it was my best hero, so when we started to play Lucio, I felt more comfortable and I could like carry the team or like do a lot more stuff that I couldn't do with Mercy. And the way I was feeling with Bumbo, it was like really good and rotations. And now back on Mercy again, I feel like I don't have the same impact as with Lucio, but I have improved a lot on my Mercy and my positioning. So now I'm like, I think way better than at the beginning.
You know what's funny about this, NeptuNo, is that you would definitely be in the conversation for best Mercy player in Overwatch League. So it's interesting that you don't feel like you have a lot of confidence in that role, because I think most people would say you're either the best Mercy or you're at the very least the top 3 Mercy player in the league. So, and you're certainly the most flashy Mercy player in the league because you love to pull out that blaster during Valk and just gun people down, right? That's your thing.
Yeah.
You get more kills on Mercy than anybody else. And I think that means, honestly, I think you have a very good command of her kit because you don't just use Valkyrie to be defensive or to provide healing, but you also use it to use the mobility to kill their DPS. Like you'll just fly at a Widowmaker and just fuck her up, right? So I think it is interesting to hear that you don't feel as comfortable on Mercy as you do on Lucio, because I don't think that you would. I think most would rank you as one of the best Mercy players in OWL.
I mean, I'm comfortable on Mercy, but I feel like I'm limited with Mercy, especially on this snipers meta, where like I have to literally hide every time and play behind corners and just chill, you know, like I don't have many options, and all the space I can use is because my team creates space for me. If my Winston does a jump on someone is contesting Widow, then I can move around and do stuff.
Sure.
But it's really annoying to play this meta. At least as Mercy, it's like you need to like have like full awareness of like the enemy snipers and what your team wants to do and how to help them. So it's like really hard for. I consider myself like really good on Mercy, but still like it's not as comfortable as play as Lucio, because I've been playing Lucio for 2 years almost.
Fair enough.
Okay.
So when you say this meta, you are referring to this patch that you'll be playing playoffs on with the new Hanzo, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So how are you finding this patch so far? Because we all know that you guys have one of the best Hanzo players in the league in Carpe. So do you feel like this is a strong meta for the Philadelphia Fusion?
I think it should be a strong meta. We haven't played that much, but with Carpe and Eco, they're both like really good on like Hanzo and Widow. So it should be a good meta for us. So there's no excuse for us if we don't perform, actually.
And what are you concerned about Boston at all? So you're the last person that we're talking to today out of many people we've already talked to. Everyone thinks Philadelphia is going to beat Boston.
I think it's gonna be pretty even, to be honest. Like, I don't know. Every time someone says we're gonna win, we always lose. So let's say it's gonna be even. I don't know. I hope we
Would I
don't.
be correct in thinking that you basically have been practicing against the two teams on the other side in the quarterfinals, Spitfire and Gladiators, and then Valiant, who you can't play until the final?
Yeah.
Are those the teams you've been scrimming?
Yeah, we haven't screened that much because I've been sick. Now we're starting streaming today. So
well, Thorin, most of the teams took a week off.
Still time.
After the season was over. So most teams took a week off and are only going to be starting scrimming like this week in these like last few days.
Right. Okay. So do you actually, in that case, if you haven't yet started the scrims, do you have a sense for where the other teams are at? Like, do the other teams all have some super sick Hanzo player, and is it going to be a different meta?
I think we're gonna have to see a lot of Hanzo. It doesn't matter if you don't have a good Hanzo. I think Hanzo is super strong right now. So yeah, it's gonna be like basically Hanzo is gonna be the star player, I guess.
Okay. So how does that work for the fusion then? Is that a good thing?
I think it is. Like, I think Eco is super good on Hanzo, so is Carpe, and both can play Widow, and both can play in like most of the DPS players, heroes, I guess.
Okay. So obviously, your first round matchup, maybe your only matchup, who knows, is the Boston Uprising. What do you think of this as an opponent?
I think we are kind of lucky that we played Boston instead of like Gladiators, because they were a stronger team, in my opinion. So I think we have to win. Like, there's no excuse right now. Like, I think we are a better team, to be honest. So if we play like around our DPS, Carpe, Eco, and we are a solid team and we don't make mistakes and we allow them to like make plays, we should win.
So you're one of the few players, I should say, on Fusion alongside Carpe, who has been playing every single match this entire season. So what was the transition from having Fraggy and Poco as your tank line to Sato and Hotba? What do Sato and Hotba bring that Fraggy and Poco don't? And how was that transition over the season for you?
I think like with Sato and Hotba is way different because like the communication was like really bad at the beginning. It was really hard to communicate with them, but it took like 2 weeks or 3 for them to like start like communicating really good with us and understanding what we say or the calls. And I have the feeling like with Sato, it's like he knows what to do every time and he's super smart. And Hotba is like more passive than Poco, like with Fraggy and Poco, it was like more aggressive, more like forcing stuff. And with Sato, it's more like, I don't know, more slow, but also like he knows when to go aggressive. It's really hard to explain for me, but I have the feeling that with Sato, I don't have to worry too much about him. That's my feeling with Sato, example. And Hotba is always with me and Bombos around and also trying to help Sato. But yeah, between Hotba and Poco, it's really hard to tell because basically they do the same thing. But it's mostly between Sato and Fraggy. I think it's the difference. Their playstyle is like way different.
Do you have a sense for who the Uprising should be at this point in time? Obviously, people remember them being fabulous in Stage 3 when they could run dive all the time. Stage 4, they had their problems for most of it. Obviously, they lost their coach as well. Who do you think they are as a team at the moment?
I think they had some troubles adapting to the meta because they were like the strongest dive team. And now they had to play like Widow. So they had mistakes on Widow, but then they started to play Striker on Widow. So I felt like that was really smart for them because Striker has like been grinding Widow a lot and now he's sick when he wasn't that good at the beginning. So I think they can be like really strong with Striker on Widow and maybe mistakes on Hanzo or whatever their mistakes being the one flexing and having Striker on Widow. I think they're stronger like that.
Okay.
I think the problem with that is Mistakes was never really shown to be a strong Widowmaker player, which is why that they put Striker on Widow after stage 3. So I think Boston is going to struggle in a double sniper meta.
I mean, Mistakes isn't a strong player generally. There's a reason he wasn't in the lineup. Like, it's just a forced scenario. So it's not their fault, but understandably, they're going to have issues in the terms of the lineup, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like Mistakes is probably like the guy that with the most pressure in the team because he's like the one that has to play the most heroes, and he's playing heroes that he hasn't played before, I guess.
Well, he didn't. He never asked to be in this situation, right? He was brought onto this team as a tracer specialist from 1-2-3. That's what he was known for. He's a very good tracer player. And now all of a sudden he has to be this crazy flex DPS player. So it's not.
Imagine that, Monty. So it turned out in the end, after all, that what Boston really needed was like a sort of super talented, really flexible DPS player. It's weird because I was informed that actually it was no big deal that Dreamcasper got kicked out and that actually, he could be replaced very easily. So again, what do I know, right? The fans win again.
Yeah, if you wait long enough, you always win the battle against overreactions, don't you? That's the glory.
It's almost like if you just don't go with a hot take at all and you just go with sort of a medium, warmed up but not too hot to eat hot take, then you just can end up with a reasonable statement at the end. Right, what about this then? So we already know, NeptuNo, that if you win the first match, you have to play against New York. Like, that's just the way it works because you're the lowest seed. Yeah. But in that sense, you already know even at the beginning of the playoffs that New York's looming in the future. What do you think of the prospect of playing the New York Excelsior?
I think it's better to play them in the semifinal and not in New York.
Yes.
So it's actually a good thing. Like, and if we win them in the semifinal, it would be like a boost of confidence, I guess, going into the final. So I think it's the best scenario for us to have to play them in the semifinal. So
I mean, clearly, though, I mean, Philadelphia is not very far from New York. You would have a lot of fans at the finals too, no doubt, if you were to go to the finals. But I mean, you're not going to have a chance to play New York in the finals because of the way the brackets work. So on a different note, so you spent this entire year playing against the two Los Angeles teams in LA. Do you think that the home field advantage or like the home crowd is a big advantage for Overwatch League teams?
I don't think it's a big advantage, but you can hear them, like you can feel that there is no support for you and everyone is supporting the enemy team. It can get into someone's mind. I mean, I think like I remember one time playing against Valiant, like we had to win to make it to playoffs and second stage 2. I felt like some pressure. I started to like, for the first time, I think last time, being pressured, like I couldn't think. So I don't know if that was the issue. It was like the crowd or something, but yeah, I could feel it that time.
Okay.
But at the same time, having a crowd the size like 15, 20,000 people is a lot more in New York that will be for the New York XL. So do you think that's going to, if they make the finals, that will be a big advantage for them?
I think it's going to be an advantage, but I don't think it's going to be an excuse or big enough to like, oh, they won because of the crowd,
Of course.
But here's the thing. I actually personally don't believe home crowd advantage exists because the problem is this. In sports, it literally exists because in American sports, you only have the crowd that is the home crowd at the fucking venue. You don't have half the stadium be the other team's fans. So in that scenario, you literally get an advantage that they can, like in the Seahawks case, they can make a lot of noise. That makes it hard to make certain play calls on the field. In basketball, obviously, they can literally be a fan right in your face, stood next to you when you're taking the ball out of bounds. There's all these reasons as to why the home crowd advantage can exist in sports. The problem in the esports context of people trying to shoehorn it in is that even when people use the angle of like, you're playing well and then the crowd's like chanting and you just feel so confident, that's just confirmation bias. When it then works, you go, right, the crowd pumped me up. What they don't tell you about is the time that you're doing really well, you're pumped up, the crowd's cheering, and you go for that extra play that you shouldn't go for, you fuck it up, you lose, no one talks about that one because you're not going to come out like, well, actually, fuck the fans. It's all that, you're not going to blame the fans in that scenario. So I think it's a bit, it can go both ways. And especially to me, the real factor I've always seen with crowd advantage is what will happen to the other team. So there are certainly teams who are not the most mentally stable or strong, and maybe they will get intimidated by a crowd. I could certainly see that existing. So I think it depends on how kind of stoic they are, how they can control their mentality. Because if they play an amazing game, it doesn't matter how the crowd pumps you up. I have a saying I say in Counter-Strike, because the problem is in Counter-Strike especially, because are in so many stadiums, all the other talent just non-stop fillet the crowd about how amazing they are and about how it's a mad advantage. So I have this line I always say, Monty. Like, obviously in a Counter-Strike context, I always just say, I wouldn't worry about it if I'm the other team and I'm the best team in the world, because no amount of boos or cheers can block headshots. So that's the mentality I would have if I was a team in this scenario. So, right, tune back in. What do you think about this, NeptuNo? In the other matchup, we have Gladiators versus Spitfire. Who do you think is favoured in this matchup?
I think Gladiators.
Why?
Why? I think because like London has been like playing like worse and worse. Maybe now they improve because I can't tell. But it looks like Gladiators with Fisher, they got so good, and everyone on the team decided to like, oh, I'm gonna do my best. Even Shortford, that was like, in my opinion, like normal Widow, he became like one of the best, stuff like that. So the team is like super good right now, and London has been like having like not that good performance, and they are lucky that they won a lot of games in the stage 1 and stage 2 because they haven't played that good at the end of the league. So I think right now Gladiators is better team.
Do you think the introduction of Hanzo can change that, though? We were hearing from some people that apparently Birdring's like spamming it, is super good at it.
Yeah, I think it might be like a change for like London. Like Hanzo is like, you have a kill potential like every second, so it can be good for them. But I don't know, I think as a team, like as team play, I think Gladiators right now is better because maybe like, I don't know, it looks like they are always doing the same thing and they have like direction. London is more like, I don't know, a lot of things going on. That's what I felt when I play against Gladiators.
Okay. So obviously you guys can't play against Valiant unless you both reach the final, in which case, okay, great. So the Valiant team obviously just won a stage. They looked very good when they did so. Do you think they can win the Overwatch League?
I think so. I don't know. I think like they have looked stronger than they were, but they are definitely one of the strongest teams in the playoffs right now and in the league.
You're not one of these people who thinks that like no matter what, it's just going to be New York.
What?
You don't think it will just definitely be New York who wins?
No, I think like New York has been the best team in the league and the most consistent team. But I think like in playoffs, anything can happen. And also like new meta, everyone is going to try hard. And New York has been like not playing that good at the end. I don't know the reason, but...
Can you guess the reason?
Yeah, I can guess it. Yeah, but I don't know. Of course, New York is probably like the most, how do I say this, like calculated team. Like they know what to do. They know what everyone's job is. And they are super good playing as a team. So if anyone can match that, I think they can lose. Because like the skill is not that difference. Maybe on Jonak, because I think he makes a huge difference on his role. But the rest is like, they are all like really good players. But in other teams, you have also really good players. So it's equal. But I think it's like the teamwork on New York, where it's like, they know what to do in every scenario. And they force you to play, like they know how they want to play and they stick to that. And they force you to play in an uncomfortable way. And there's nothing you can do sometimes. So I don't know. I think New York is they have a huge chance, but also not 100%. Like, I would say like anything can beat them right now, to be honest. But I think it's still the strongest team.
Okay. When you played them famously in that stage playoffs where it was a really close match, after the match, I mean, I know why they said this because, they were just giving their reasons, but I did make the joke that like it almost seems a bit unreasonable that they won the match, but afterwards basically complained like, but we didn't know we'd be playing Philadelphia, and if we had, we'd have beaten them even harder. Like, they almost like inadvertently BM'd you a bit in that sense. What do you think it takes to actually beat New York Excelsior? What kind of team would it have to be, or how do you have to match up to defeat them, do you think?
First of all, what they say about we didn't know Philadelphia is going to be against us, I don't know. I don't like that excuse or whatever, because like they use strats against us that they prepare against London, but if they know we are not London, why would they do it? And also like, I think we got the credit on that final. Like we played really good, but they adapted like really good on the second half, and they outplayed us, so they deserved to win. But I think we played really good like against London and the first 2 maps against New York. And I think to beat New York as a team, I think we need to be like super disciplined, like super solid, like with the backline and tanks, like especially supports and tanks. We need to like be consistent and support like our create space for our DPS. And basically, because our DPS are like really good, probably the best in the league, or like top 5, Carpe and EQ. So if we build like a solid group between supports and tanks, and we play a solid Overwatch, giving information and making plans and tracking ults, I think we can definitely beat New York.
Monty, you know, with an earlier guest, we were discussing. Actually, I think this is the one that like fatefully did not make it in, but we were discussing who is the best DPS duo. That's the one we forgot, wasn't it? Like EQO and Carpe is pretty good.
Yeah, very good.
It's got to be a contender, right?
Sure.
Especially since obviously the bizarre thing about some of the Korean teams is, like in the case of London, obviously they just have the one really good DPS. So as a duo, does work.
Yep.
Any
I
final
think
question?
Well, London does have an exceptional DPS duo as well, but I think, yeah, obviously Carpe is, you know, in and of himself was definitely a strong contender for the MVP for the overall Overwatch League season, and still could be a playoff MVP potentially. And EQO, we talked about him earlier and how much the Fusion's win percentage increases when he's playing in a game. So yeah, definitely one of the top DPS duos.
Do you have any last topic to bring up with NeptuNo here before we round off the show? Did that just cut out there or something?
No, he's thinking, yeah, no more topics. I mean, you guys are in a very interesting situation because you have more scrim opportunities in the playoffs because you know 100% if you win who you will be playing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess Boston do too. It's you and Boston have the 100% knowledge of who you will play if you win, which I think is very interesting, which means you have more chances to practice against like the Valiant, and Boston has chances to practice against New York.
Yeah.
So do you feel like that's an advantage that you have going in? I know you haven't scrimmed a lot yet.
Yeah, I think it's good because we scrim one more team, I guess. So it's like we can see what other teams are doing and have more like information about like what heroes, what metas, how they counter some strats or how they play some maps. So that's really good for us, I guess, if we make use of it, of course.
I have another question for you. The map pool is not very favorable to you guys, like as in there are a lot of maps in this pool that you have not very good records on. Are you concerned about that? Or do you think that was a long time ago? You had a different roster, different meta?
I think, yeah, the map is really bad for us. Like some of the maps, like we were like really bad. So it's like we need to do an extra effort, and with this new meta, have like that motivation to, okay, let's be good on this map. Let's see how we should play this map. Because like we were like really, really bad on some maps. We couldn't win basically against any team. It was like a shame, to be honest. I was like really mad about it. So I think we can use that in our advantage and actually learn the maps, learn how to play with this new meta, with the snipers, and let's see how can we adapt that in our favor.
Okay. At the end of the episode, do you have any final words for us, NeptuNo?
No.
No, gracias. Okay. Cheers,
gracias. Oh, no.
Thank you.